All right, welcome everyone. It is March 3rd, 2020. It's Kingston Planning Board night. And introducing folks up here to my far left is Town Engineer Dennis Quintal, Board Alternate Steve Hatfield, who will be a voting member tonight because we are without Robin Duguay. She's not here tonight. Vice Chair and Board Member Peter Coffin, Board Member Lynn Merrill. We have a new Selectmen's Rep and former Planning Board person.
Former Planning Board Chair.
Yeah, Chair for a while and person for another time. Richard Wilson, so welcome. Thank you. Glenn Koppelman here. Normally to my right is Ellen Faulkner, our Administrative Assistant and also a Board Alternate. She is also not here, so she'll be doing these minutes from tape, and all the more reason to be very careful when you speak. And make sure the mics around the table are set up to capture our voices, but try to speak up as best you can. Board members Chris Bashaw and Peter Bakey, and our town planner Glenn Greenwood. And Adam is behind the curtain doing the filming. Okay, the first item on our agenda is actually not on the written agenda, but it is something that the board discussed at its last meeting, and it's regarding the particular auto sales site down on 125, just over it's pretty close to the line, isn't it, Glenn? Yeah. And Mr. Khalil, you're here for that, yes? Yes. All right, so if you could come up to the table here and maybe the mic on the table in here might capture you, but if it doesn't, Adam will tell us, and he'll ask you to use that mic there.
I am.
And I asked Glenn earlier, since he's had some background on this, if he would introduce the subject to us, and then we can have a discussion.
Sure. A month or so ago, we got a letter from Mr. Khalil informing the board that he was going to be taking over the business that was down there. He's owned it for some time.
25 years.
Yeah, but it had been being leased by John's Truck and
Jack's Towing.
Jack's Towing. And there had been issues with Jack's Towing that had sort of been ongoing. The town had talked with him about a number of things over the last couple of years. And with his withdrawal from the site and Mr. Khalil's taking it back, the board wanted to have Mr. Khalil come in and just make sure everybody understands what the existing site plan allows for, and so that we don't get into some of the issues that were occurring. The predominant ones were really way on the site as opposed to what the approval was for, which led to there being no real negotiable areas on site for vehicles to move around. It was really all just parked vehicles. There had been some signage issues. There had been long-standing issues with vehicles being parked out in the state right-of-way. That issue actually got addressed with Jack's Towing. It's been a number of months since I did sort of repeated viewings of the site to see if things were getting accomplished, and the right-of-way got cleared quite a while ago and was pretty consistently cleared, but on site there were still way too many vehicles. There were also vehicles parked out back, out behind the buildings, which the site plan doesn't allow for. And so we just wanted to make sure that Mr. Khalil was aware of the issues that had been predominant, and that as he reinstituted his business, that these issues wouldn't come up. So the board wanted to have this dialogue. So
Okay.
With that being said, I'll stop.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. So,
Which property are we talking about? We've got 4 car dealership properties in that area?
It used to be Little Old Lady,
Okay.
and then it was Jack's Towing.
Thank you. Thank you.
does anyone have a question about which property we're talking about?
It's on the east side of 125.
Correct.
Correct.
Right where the river goes right along the property line in front. Okay. Okay, so Mr. Khalil, maybe you can just just brief us on what it is that you're planning to do?
Okay. Well, I've owned the property for about 25 years, and 15 to 20 of those years, I've owned or operated the business out of there, which was a car dealership. I'm very aware of the parking, the entrances. It's a pretty good situation. Just recently, Mr. Greenwood, I actually brought it to his attention that my tenant, Jack's Towing, they leased it last February, and ever since they moved in there, I've been telling them, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, and you can't do that. I evicted them. So today was one of the last court hearings for the eviction. So, I mean, they were clearly exactly like Mr. Green was saying, too many vehicles, parking in front on the state property. It was just a disaster. So for the 20 years that I've owned it, we've always had a sign permit. We've always maintained the property very clean and neat because I own the property. I don't like messy properties. And so I plan on going back in there. I just evicted Jack. I'm in the process of still eliminating his goods off the property. It was very messy there. I'm embarrassed. Prior to the eviction, I came to the town hall and I said, listen, I apologize for my tenant. I have no control of him. It looks like I'm gonna have to evict him, so I ended up evicting him, and it took 4 or 5 months, but I got him out off the property, and all I do is keep a clean operation. It's plowed correctly. The entrances are always clean and neat. The sign has always a legal permit. Whenever I do anything, I get the permit for a sign permit, and then I have Salem Sign or somebody do put a new sign up. But through the years, I've had a couple different names there, so I've always had different sign permits, and it's a very well maintained piece of property. It's now with they just built a steel building up behind it, and the gentleman of the property is a close friend of mine, and I said, Mark, we're gonna keep this place looking good, but we'll clean this whole thing up. And I also apologize to him. He's looking down on it, and he's seeing, boats and things are there that I'm completely blown away by.
That's Mark Vines.
Yes, yeah. So we're close friends, and he wants to see a nice location, and I do too. Ugly is not my style, so.
Okay.
So it's gonna be operated correctly, and plenty of parking there for the amount of cars that we have.
Okay, I only have, Glenn said there were more copies in there than this, but I'm just gonna pass this quickly. This is the plan that shows the parking spaces, where they are, and just so the board can take a quick look at it. I want to read the letter that you sent into to the board.
Okay, great, thank you.
Just so we have it in the record, and it reflects pretty much what you just talked about. And I have a date on it of February 3rd of this year. It says, I, Robert Khalil, owner of R&G Realty Trust, located at number 5 State Route 125 in Kingston, New Hampshire, would like to inform the board that my daughter, Mackenzie, and I will be opening and operating a family business selling used vehicles. The business will be registered as Truck World. Is that still the?
Yes.
Yep. And will be located at the address stated above. I have owned the property for 20 years and have previously ran a car dealership there for 15 years. I am fully aware of the rules and regulations per the site plan. Thank you for your time, Robert Khalil. So that came into the town. Okay. So.
And subsequently, a request for zoning clarification and approval has come from the state dealer desk as well.
Right, so we do have, from the Department of Safety and Motor Vehicles, a request for a retail vehicle dealer license.
Oh, that's something they just sent you? Is that recent?
This is just, it's dated February 25.
Fabulous, I've been waiting for you to get that.
Well, we got
good.
it.
Thank you very much.
We've got it. So there are a couple of questions here to answer by this board.
Okay.
And assuming that it passes muster here, we would recommend that the select board is the signing entity here, so we would be passing it on to them to sign on behalf of the town. But let me just read these couple of things. Is this a new license or a renewal?
New.
It's a new one. And it's for that site specifically?
Yes.
Okay. And it says the address 5 Route 125, which corresponds with what you said in the letter. And there are a couple of questions here for us to answer. The applicant whose name appears in the above section complies with local ordinances or requirements or has a variance to operate? Yes on that? Is properly zoned for commercial use? Yes. It asks for the property owner's name and address to be put in here. So you're the
Put
owner.
R&G Realty Trust,
R&G Realty Trust.
and that would be 2 Lipple Road in
Hang on.
Atkinson.
Hang on. 2
Lipple Road,
LIPPOLD
IPPOLD, in Atkinson, New Hampshire.
Okay. Next question, can motor vehicles be displayed and/or stored? And per the site plan is yes. And it says list any restrictions, and I'm going to refer to the site plan.
You know something, I don't, maybe the name on that should be my name instead of the owner of the property's name, because the owner of the property is the Realty Trust, and I'm actually getting the license in my name, and I'm renting off the Realty Trust. So it should probably put Robert Khalil.
But this says the property owner. Who is the property?
I'm the property owner,
You are.
yeah. But it's listed as R&G Realty Trust, so if I'm getting a license, they're gonna want my name on that, not the trust. The trust is just, when you own property, I have to pay I still have a mortgage on it, so the trust, the business would pay the trust the rent.
Okay, so I've changed it and put you as the owner. Same street address?
Yes.
Okay. So going back to can motor vehicles be displayed or stored? Yes, and thank you. And under list any restrictions, I'm just going to say per approved site plan. Okay. Is signage permitted? Yes. And are there any signage restrictions? And again, I'm going to say per approved site plan and town sign ordinance. Okay. And then the next question, it is recommended that the Division of Motor Vehicles, and we have 2 choices, either deny the applicant's appointment or approve if otherwise qualified. Is the board comfortable with me saying that we should approve, that the select board should approve this?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I am handing this to the selectman representative to process that.
I have a question for you. I just want to make sure, I have many addresses, I just want to make sure she used the correct address as 2 Lipple Road. She could have my personal address down there, I don't know, but if Ellen or somebody has to change that tomorrow, that wouldn't be a big deal, would it?
Well, you should contact the selectman's office, Susan in the selectman's office. She'll have it.
Is that's where Glenn works?
No,
Downstairs.
Oh, downstairs, okay.
Just go in the back door.
Okay, thank you.
okay. All right, questions from the board?
You have a copy of the site plan, right?
I probably do, but if you could make me one, I would appreciate it.
Well, yeah, it'd be useful, because one thing, that looks like it's cut off a little bit, and I'm not clear on how many parking spaces there are, so that should be established.
I'll make a copy for him.
That'd be great, thank you very much.
I'm not in until Thursday.
That's fine, I'm not in a rush for it.
It's not going anywhere. Yeah, can you, if that's chopped off, it's, some of the parking spaces are chopped off, so you can actually write down the total number, because it looks like you used 1 through 10 twice.
The lot is set up where you can only park the cars certain ways. It's not
It
like,
really is,
you can only park them this way, and in the back, and that's the
but
end
you'd
of it.
be amazed how many got,
That's why I'm asking, so just so that there's no confusion between Mr. Cleo and the board and the town and everybody else.
Did it have a number of parking spots on there?
Well, it doesn't say specifically,
Well, it shows them lined off,
Okay.
so,
and number, but I think there's
You
some
look,
missing. on
I'm
the right.
sure, 49 spots or 60, or, I don't really plan on having a tremendous amount of cars at this time around. I'm getting a little old for the business and just kind of doing it as a hobby.
the right-hand side of the plan is cut off. The highest number goes to, looks like 33 maybe, but there are probably more
Okay.
further down,
Okay,
but they are all delineated and numbered.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, other questions from the board?
Let's just say thank you.
Yeah, it was a mess over there. I apologize. I really do, from the bottom of my heart. Jack was really making a mess over there. Richard Wilson, are you my neighbor on 19, are you the Wilson, the Foundation Wilson? No? Just one. I was gonna say hi to her. Am I excused? Any questions?
Well, hang on, let me just make sure that the board is comfortable with this. We should probably follow this up, since this was not, I mean, this is just really a confirmation that Mr. Khalil is going to be following the site plan. We should probably follow up with a letter, just indicating that what happened here at the meeting, and just to tidy it up.
I have a question while I'm here. Is the board involved with the signage? Is this board, you don't have,
Well, to the extent that we would normally see where the sign is going to be on the site plan, but the permit for it is handled out of the selectman's office.
well, the sign has never changed location, but it's just, I wanted to kind of change the sign around, and I don't want to lose any of the square footage of the sign. 'Cause-
you'll want to work with the building inspector.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, Mr. Khalil, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it.
Good luck. So we started that one at 6:45, ended it at 7:00, we're going to call it 7:04. Okay. We'll call this one starting at 7:05. So now on to the printed agenda. The legal notice for this one reads that the location that we're dealing with now is Hanoverian Holdings LLC at 1 Liberty Lane, tax map R33, lot...
Library.
What did I say?
Liberty. There is a little bit of Hampton.
Patriotic too.
It's close.
That's Hampton Falls.
Library Lane, tax map R33, lot 21-1, and it says the applicant is proposing an expansion of the existing parking lot. So, you're a tall person, you might want to talking with the camera? Okay. All right, if you would introduce yourself, sir?
Sure. Good evening. Barry Geyer with Jones & Beach Engineer here. This project is for 1 Library Lane, it's tax map 33, lot 21-1. It's a 3-acre parcel in the rural residential zone, also in the Aquifer Protection Zone B. The existing site currently contains 1 office building, approximately 3,600 square foot footprint, with outbuilding for meetings and training, which I think you guys talked about a couple months ago. It's about 1,150 square feet, and a shed. Contains a parking lot with 63 current spaces with access from Library Lane.
While you're talking, I'm just going to get some plans out for folks. You guys have plans?
Yep. is 292. The applicant has reorganized and reallocated space within the building. The training space they previously had inside the building is now going to be utilized in the old garage that was repurposed in front of the board recently. We flip the next page. So to make to be installed in the western portion of the site. Down the kind of adjacent to the portion of the site, you see the outline, new parking area in blue. As indicated, the project is located in the Aquifer Protection District Zone B, which has an allowable coverage of 25%. Current site is at 24.1% coverage with infiltration. And the proposed with the infiltration basin. For the proposed site. I'll take any questions the board may have.
Okay, thank you. I think we do have written comments from both town engineer and planner.
Yeah, we received the written comments tonight. I read through them. We don't have any problems with the written comments from either Mr. Greenwood or Mr. Quintal.
Okay, but I'm going to ask them to verbalize them for the benefit of the board and for the audience as well. Dennis, would you like to start? And the board has copies of this, so if you can follow along.
So I offer the following comments to the board. Number one, in order to capture contaminants in the runoff from the paved area, I recommend installing a hooded catch basin at the low point of the parking. Discharge from the basin would then go into the infiltration basin to recharge groundwater. There's no stormwater treatment before it goes into the infiltration basin, so it's not that by a hooded catch basin, you'd at least catch any oils, contaminants coming off, and sediments and whatnot. So just that's one of my recommendations. Number two, Article 104.5E and 9046D and so on, should the 50-foot vegetated buffer from a residential elderly development be required in this case? Number three, Article 9045G25, plan should show the building height. G28, the sheet C1, the existing building is labeled dwelling. Plan should show location and size of the sewer disposal system, which I think we had talked about that before. It shows where the septic tanks are in front of the house, but it doesn't show where the leach field is, but I believe it's right in the front. G33, show signs. 34, show lighting. 9046E2, refuge container fencing must be solid, between 6 and 8 feet tall. The detail shows dimension height of 5 foot 2 inches, and it does not appear to be solid. Number 8, GD1, the infiltration basin detail should indicate the separation from the surface to seasonal high water table in the area, so a test pit should be required. Number 9, in the outlet structure detail, the width is shown as 6 feet wide, but in the top view, it's shown as 7 feet wide in the AA view. And so those are the only comments that I had.
Okay. Glenn, would you like to go through yours, and then I'll ask if Mr. Geyer has any immediate questions or response to these?
Sure. So on my first one, I have, could the applicant describe why there is such an increase in parking area since there has been no increase in the size of the building? Is this parking associated with the new meeting space recently approved by the planning board? The board seldom sees a facility with 3 times the required parking. They certainly can. I just am interested to know why. The existing septic system is supposed to be detailed on the plan. Does the need for new parking area equate to a need for additional septic capability? The plan does not indicate the existence of any signage. In my mind's eye, there is signage out there, and Barry and I had this discussion. There actually is signage out there, so we do need to have it shown. The plan indicates that impervious coverage is proposed to be 32.2%. This is allowed by the ordinance if on-site stormwater management means recharge occurs on-site. I believe that this is the case, but as always, I defer to the town engineer on issues of stormwater management, so he'll talk the board through that. Building elevations are required by town regulation, but photographs of the building were provided in the previous site plan review, so I am satisfied with the compliance on this item. We asked at that site plan that they provide photos, which is what we normally do when the structure already exists. It seems to me that the shed located off the rear parking area is actually closer to the property line than presently depicted. It does not, however, appear to encroach upon the setback. This was a request by the library. They thought that that shed was too close to the property boundary. It does seem that it's not where it shows on the plan, that it's actually one parking lot, one parking space closer to the property boundary, but from my eye and looking at the plan, it seems to me it still isn't within the building setback. It's actually located appropriately. I just think they should show it as it actually resides on the site. So Barry said that he'd have his folks look at it and make sure that its location with reference to the parking spaces is correct. And those are mine. I don't have anything substantial, really.
Mr. Gar, you said you've had a chance to look at these, and
Yeah. Answering or modifying the plans to accommodate the comments. As indicated, the increase in parking areas, because they reorganized the interior of the building, provided additional cubicle work areas. They previously had a lot of the area that was inside the building that was dedicated to the training area that now was going to happen in what was previously the garage, so they could reallocate that for additional desk space. As indicated, the septic system, we ran through the calculations on that. That seems to be adequate. There is a sign. We will locate it. We'll also check on the location of the shed. And other than that, we'll just, make the changes that the town engineer requested and bring those back to you.
So the big building, the main building has been reconfigured inside, and then there's also now the addition of what, additional space in what used to be the garage.
Correct, that's now training space or meeting space. And so that space that was previously inside the larger building is now reallocated.
Okay. And would you be able to address the question that came up with regard to handling stormwater on site because of the degree of impervious cover?
Yes, we have an infiltration basin, which is the requirement to exceed the 25% in Zone B, as well as we will include pre-treatment per Mr. Quintal, is comment.
Is that the issue, your comment regarding the catch basin, Dennis?
Yeah. Elevations are on the large storms, the 50 and 100-year storms, the elevation of the pond, everything's so flat out there that the elevation of the peak elevation of the storm encroaches onto the paved area a little bit. That only lasts a short period of time, and it's only rarely does that happen. But that certainly is something to have them take a look at with the test pit information, maybe lowering the infiltration basin a little bit to compensate for that, maybe could minimize the amount of flooding that would go over onto the paved area during a live storm event. I think that that's a big issue, but it's something that maybe to take a look at as well. The other comment that I had about the setback was I wasn't sure about with the development, with the Bluestone development next door, whether that's considered a residential development. Because looking at 104.5 talks about setbacks and buffers from the rural residential district, and it talks about side and rear setbacks. Between commercial and residential uses, a 50-foot vegetated buffer shall be suitable, planted, and permanently maintained. Plantings will be no less than 50% evergreen, and so on and so on. So I didn't know if that is something that would be part of this application, or imply would be.
That's not even handled, right? It's not there, I mean, the development yet. So, I mean, we don't even know if that's gonna happen.
Well, we have reviewed the plan, have we not, Glenn?
We've conditionally approved it.
Yeah. Yeah, it just hasn't happened yet. But it is a residential use, we know that. And this plan is additional pavement for parking, is that right?
Correct.
And the part that's going to be paved is currently what now? Is it vegetated in some way, or?
Yeah, it's currently a combination of grass and trees.
Okay. So the board should have a discussion then about, you know, what, if anything, would be an appropriate buffer there, because obviously some vegetation is going to be removed that was there, or is there.
Can we pull the plans for the Kingston development and see what the buffer is between the last condo and the last building and their buffer? So that we can see what the total setback was from where the buildings are to where the parking lot is?
Well, we could, except that this buffer would need, whatever the board feels is appropriate, needs to be on this site. And I don't know, Glenn, if it'd be easy to get those plans or not.
I was just thinking if we were going to make a waiver of some sort, it might be nice to know the distances that we were talking about.
Good point.
I can certainly get that plan.
Okay.
Well, it's a zoning ordinance. It's in the regulation, it's in the zoning, it's 104.5.
That's correct, but this is an existing site plan that's been there forever. I mean, this hasn't, but the remainder of the site's been there forever.
Well, it's an existing use, but they're expanding it, and they're going to be removing vegetation, so.
So how much vegetation would be removed?
So, are you asking our opinion, and you telling us?
Well, no, the board needs to discuss it.
Well, I think Lynn has a valid point. If that building on the approaching property is a certain distance away, I think that would maybe think of what we're gonna use for a buffer there. If it's right on the property, then maybe they have to have a pretty thick buffer. Yep. So I think she has a valid point to know where the building's gonna sit.
Yep. And Glenn has gone to get the plan, so when he brings it back, we can take a look at that.
I just brought it up for you to discuss. But just thought you needed to discuss.
Well, that I think would need to be noticed to the abutters as far as if there was going to be a waiver of the town requirements for a buffer. I know if I owned property over here, I'd be pretty upset if I wasn't notified that there was going to be an encroachment.
They were notified to be here tonight.
Well, this is a public hearing, they were notified. This is a public hearing, so, and that's a reminder for me to make sure that you all know that this is a public hearing, and that we'll shortly be opening it to public comment if folks have questions or comments to make on this.
What's this buffer supposed to be?
The buffer between is 50 feet.
If it's residential,
That's 20 feet shown on the map. I was gonna say, he's only showing about 30 feet from the hot top to the property line. So
Correct.
you can't get a 50-foot buffer. Right, yeah.
but the adjacent property is also residential or commercial.
Unless it got moved up this way.
This is the extent of the development. Yeah.
That's Jones too.
This is him here. Oh, yeah, I know. From the lot line to the building is 32 and a half feet roughly. Pretty close.
Did you say 32?
32 and a half feet from the lot line.
Which is about 60 feet to the hot side, roughly. That's the shortest point.
This is
Okay.
Hanoverian there. To this corner, 32.
All the way down the line.
It's less than 20-foot setback.
To here. Another 12 feet to the building. So this would bring about 20 feet more this way.
Glenn, are you looking up what the requirement is?
I already looked it up.
Okay.
1045, Glenn?
There you go. Dennis, will you give me a signature? So Lynn or Glenn, do you want to refresh the folks on what the,
Glenn, Kevin? I closed my phone, I closed it.
It's under setbacks and bufferings. It says side and rear. New buildings shall be set back 20 feet from the side and rear lot lines. Between commercial and residential uses, a 50-foot vegetated buffer shall be suitably planted and permanently maintained. Plantings will be no less than 50% evergreen for year-round screening. Additional setbacks may be required for compliance with other applicable regulations and ordinances, including but not limited to wetland, shoreline, and aquifer protection.
So when I looked at the regulation, I also checked to see the lots, and the lot next to a Bluestone, I checked to see if it was commercial or residential, and it is residential with commercial uses. So that was, I just double checked that, so it's clear that it's residential, but with allowed commercial uses, they chose to do residential. If they had chosen to do commercial, I don't think we'd have this discussion.
so Glenn, is that an ordinance or a regulation?
That's an ordinance.
It is an ordinance. Okay, which means the board doesn't have the opportunity to waive that. Does it give any flexibility as to making it a narrower buffer if something like fencing is put in, or no? All right, so board needs to make a call on this one. Obviously, the site exists. The current use is there. There is vegetation of some sort. I don't know what it looks like. I haven't looked at the property in a while, so I don't know what's there now. Mr. Guyer said that it's a blend of grass and some trees.
Yeah, you can actually see, we show the tree line on our plan side in green. I guess my question would be, the 104.5E indicates that between a commercial and residential use, a 50-foot vegetative buffer shall be suitably planted and permanently maintained. If we have 25 feet from the other property, which I believe is our landscape setback, if we had another 25 feet on our side, would that meet the compliance? Would that be in compliance? So that would be a 25-foot between the uses.
Well, I mean, the board can make that call, but, I mean, usually the buffer is required on the applicant's side, and not.
One thing that's confusing about this is, I mean, the title of that section is Structure and Dwelling Regulations, and refers to new, and a lot of it is referring to new buildings. It doesn't really, I mean, and it's specifically under structure and dwellings, and then it references the residential and commercial uses, but it's, was that designed to be specific to a buffer from, a 50-foot buffer from a building? Or the entire, the entire use?
We count driveways, I think we've done this before, but the driveways are counted as structures in this town. And that's why they have the same 20-foot setbacks in residential or whatever. So I think parking lots are also considered, because they're constructed, they're considered structures. Our definition of structure is unfortunately varies in that example.
Well, I think when you read it where it says, no portion of the development should be less than 50 feet, that's a parking lot would be considered a portion.
Plus, couldn't be vegetated.
Well, I think the other thing you have to look at is their current, they have a site plan approval, but no current use.
The neighboring property?
Correct.
Well, just because it's not built, you know, if it hadn't been approved already for a residential use, let's say it were just a vacant piece without any approvals, there's always the possibility that because it's in rural residential, it could come in as commercial use.
And it could be commercial, it still could be a commercial use. We don't know.
But what's approved?
It has an approval, but no use currently.
Well, that's true.
But then you go by the zone, which is residential.
With commercial uses.
Well, but it can have commercial uses.
That one has, that particular lot has specific commercial uses that it can have.
Plus all the ones listed in the rural residential.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's also where they're showing their snow storage. It's in that area. So if you have a buffer there, you're going to probably put in snow. Bring your buffer, type of hot tub.
That's where the snow storage is.
Yeah, there's that, see, there's a problem here.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Here, it's a bigger area. Right there, it's no here.
Is it
This is existing, if you go back. Here. It's all snow storage. And this is the buffer that would come.
And the new parking is
Like from here over, the dark part.
Is there a way it could be redesigned so that the parking spaces that are on the setback area might be moved to the, more toward 107? Yeah. Would that
we can look at that. Because of the aisles that would be required, we'd probably have additional impervious. I think a better thing would be to bump up the screening along that edge, personally, if it were me, rather than the additional impervious that may be created. And the impervious would be, the parking would be on the side of the building closer to Marshall Road, which I think, and 125, which I think the board would prefer it be either to the side or the rear of the building.
While the board is thinking about that, we do have comments from town departments. Our fire department has no comments. Building department, show a handicap parking space as van accessible with proper signage and dimensions. And health department, question, is parking something more occupants would this change lot loading?
Loading for the septic.
Oh, for septic. And you've already addressed the,
Yeah, we looked at the lot loading as well as the existing septic system design.
I'm going to ask at this point, I'm going to open it for public comment, and then we can do that piece and then get back to the board. Is there anyone here in a butter or an interested party that has a question or would like to make a comment on this application? Okay, there being nobody running up to the mic, I'll assume that if there are no questions or comments from the butters or audience, so we'll close public hearing. Public comment, I'm sorry, public comment. All right. Okay, so the buffering item is an ordinance, which means that this board doesn't have the opportunity to waive it. So
Redesign or send to ZBA.
well, I mean, the Glenn, if you have a suggestion.
I'm gonna say, first off, I didn't catch this, so there's a little egg on my face right now. But we have on the abutting parcel required a 25-foot landscape buffer that's going to remain in place. It's not usual for us to allow that the 50-foot buffer wouldn't be all on the subject parcel. But the goal of the ordinance is that there be a 50-foot landscape buffer. And we require a 25-foot one that's going to stay on that abutting parcel. So if we mimic that and require 25 feet on this parcel, you're getting the 50-foot that's required, and both of them, by virtue of the approved site plans, have to remain in place. It's not like this is a house on the other side where the abutter would be able to have whatever they wanted in that 25-foot setback area. The approved plan says it will be a landscape buffer area. So although I am rationalizing this right now, and I'm not trying to...
Hold it. Okay.
I'm not trying to say I'm not rationalizing this. I think that the goal of the ordinance is met by having 25 feet on both sides, because both of them are being required of an approved site plan.
Okay. So we have Glenn sort of offering us a possible way out here, if the board is comfortable with that. If we did something like that, what modification would need to be done to this plan? Is it possible to do a 25-foot?
Can definitely do a 20.
20 already on there.
20's already on
It's
there.
like another 5.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it.
It is affected though by the snow storage area that you.
But there's also over here that
Which we could relocate,
I
the
mean,
snow storage.
they can relocate snow storage on that particular site. They could even say they were, call it off-site business. Seems to me it's I'm not sure you can get the full 25 feet, the way it's.
It looks close, and I didn't bring my scale with me, unfortunately. So, but I think we could get easily, and then we would show a permanent 25-foot landscape buffer on the actual site plan that could be enforced by the board if necessary. We would also offer additional screening for that area to beef up the existing landscaping and to improve the areas that we're actually having to remove some of the vegetation.
Okay.
Because the goal, it's clear the goal is that there'd be a 50-foot separation. And I think that this means that we could establish that 50-foot separation between the two uses. Again, knowingly rationalizing.
Understood. Other comments from the board?
Yes, one is it's a business office, but typically it's gonna be mainly shut down at the 5, 6 o'clock hours.
Weekends.
And weekends, so it's limited. I mean, to me, if I lived in that residential area, headlights would be the biggest issue, and a 50-foot buffer is gonna take care of that.
Would a fence along that side provide any additional protection for the residences with particular regard to things like lights? I know that we don't have it in our ordinance, but I know that in some ordinances it talks about a buffer of a particular width, and it does give flexibility that if you want to reduce that.
Well, we don't allow it in our ordinance, but we do allow it in our regulations, in our site plan review regulations. We actually stipulate that you can use fencing as opposed to landscaping if that's what's agreed. It's just not a part of this ordinance.
Well, this is a site plan, is it not? Should we not be looking at the site plan, Ray?
Well, zoning over Trump's site plan. I mean, they should work in concert.
I'm just.
Approved hours of operation are for the current building.
I'm sorry?
The current operation hours, I didn't see them on this plan.
Oh, yeah, it's on like
is?
on the proposed conditions plan, I believe, so like sheet 2. Where you put the hours of operation, I can't remember which sheet you put that on.
Yeah, I think they're on the existing condition. I think it says 8:30 to 5 or something of that nature. But I think the option of a stockade fence along that edge is appropriate.
In addition to the.
In addition to the planting, because that would definitely cut down on any headlight glare into the, that might potentially cross over. And the applicant isn't opposed to that.
Did you find them, Glenn? Sorry? Did you find the hours of operation?
Yeah, it's not the cover sheet, go in one sheet, and it's mid-page. It says number of employees and number and hours of operation.
There they are, 8:30 to 5, Monday to 5.
See, that to me, if it's 5 o'clock operation, when you've eliminated the problem of headlights.
Yeah, except for 45 minutes or half hour.
Which is not bedtime.
Correct.
Well, not most of the time, anyway.
But of course, in winter is when any deciduous vegetation is going to be gone, and so you have a higher likelihood of light penetration over to the other side.
Well, it also says 45 employees, and my understanding is this plan is designed to allow an increase in employees? Would you normally put down the number you're expecting to have?
Yeah, that's the existing, so no, on the existing site, so we will have additional employees.
Are you going to change hours of operation?
No.
So if the board were to be comfortable with what our planner was suggesting, it would mean the creation of 25 feet of vegetative buffer on this property. Maybe some of it already exists.
Right, and we would beef up whatever it doesn't and add the stockade fence if it's at the pleasure of the board.
Well, what is the board's thought on that?
I have no problem with what Glenn said, going with the 25 on each property. As far as the fence, he's pretty close to being able to get 50 feet in there in part of the area. But at least the parking lot, immediate parking lot had fence, because of, you know, for headlights and stuff, that would be nice, but.
Anybody else have a thought or an opinion?
I agree, I don't think there's a lot of, you go down there right now and you look at that property line, there's not a lot of vegetative on their side, pretty grassy right there, you can see this, they dictated. So yeah, they're gonna be parking some vehicles a little closer to the line, but I think between them buffing it up and put a fence in, it's probably gonna make it better than it is.
Question, where the fence should go? Oh, sorry.
My question is about where the preferred location for a fence, if this is what we decide to go with, whether it would be more convenient to have it, you know, whatever, the 1 foot inside the property line, wherever town regs are, so that it's not right at the edge of the parking lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And, you know, it would create a bit visual buffer. The fence itself would be somewhat buffered by being in the woods.
And I'm just thinking for aesthetic reasons and for practical reasons, that it might make sense to have a fence, you know, slightly over.
Motion,
I have a question before you do
we
that.
have to accept jurisdiction?
Yes.
Make a motion, we accept
Is
jurisdiction.
that where you were going? Oh, good, okay.
Question? No, that's okay, go ahead with that first.
Make a motion, we accept jurisdiction of the plan.
All right, motion by Lynn, second by Peter Baiki to accept this plan as complete enough for us to take action on it and to start the 65-day statutory clock for making decision. Discussion? All in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? Abstentions? So that's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Dennis, you had something?
Yeah, I mean, I just look at this zoning ordinance situation and a buffer zone on the property requirement. And my question is, if this planning board is going to allow compromise to that ordinance, does that set a precedent for any other project that comes before you?
And I mean, I have to tell you that I mean, as nice as the compromise is, I personally don't think that it's the right thing to do. But
I don't think we have that option, quite frankly. We've had this discussion before about who's required to have the buffer, And the applicant does have the ability to take it to the zoning board of adjustment and get a waiver or a variance from the requirements. That would, I know there's not people living there now, but that would mean that the people who are developing next door would at least know that there's a challenge to the zoning ordinance that would protect them from commercial use. So they'd have plenty of time, chance to weigh in.
Yeah, I think the compromise that's proposed would essentially accomplish what the intention of the ordinance is, but by us agreeing to the compromise, we're essentially assenting to the fact that the commercial and residential activities are not occurring in the buffer zone, or, you know, to accommodate that, but I think it's the property.
So if,
So I'm thinking, I think the ordinance is pretty clear that it has to be 50 feet. If we want to change it, we should change it at the next election. And I think we should send this to the zoning board of adjustment, or have them send it to the zoning board of adjustment with.
Or at their option.
At their option, well, suggest that they might do that at their option, so that, and with that, let the zoning board of adjustment know very clearly that we think it meets the intentions of the ordinance, if not the regulation.
so that would be, I mean, if that's kind of the way the board is feeling, I mean, that would be one option. The other option would be to allow the applicant to possibly consider a redesign that would allow them to do a full buffer.
What choice?
Any thoughts on that, Mr. Guyer?
Well, it's obvious from the board that we're not gonna have a resolution tonight, so, I'll have to talk to our client and see which direction they wanna go, and what the potential is for, if we could obtain the 50-foot setback without having to go to ZBA, or maybe ZBA is an option as well. Maybe we do both and see where we go. So we would ask to be continued.
So I would say as a board member, well, I think if we're gonna get into the technicality of the fact that it is an ordinance, but I would be okay with the board presenting that we feel that the compromise would fulfill the intent, but it would still have to go before the ZBA for that, unless they did that, the redesign. What day do you want to continue to?
Well, we would ask to be continued to the next available date, and then we can always,
So we should deny that.
Yeah, so they go to, if they.
So he's got the right to go to ZBA immediately.
Well, but what if he does, and what if, when he fortunately his client, he'd rather do a redesign?
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
So if we deny the application, you have the immediate authority to appeal to the ZBA, but if we just continue it without a denial, you'd have to wait till that hearing, and maybe that's when you have your decision that you want to go to ZBA, but when you're working with the ZBA calendar, that
We
could go.
don't, if we indicate to the ZBA that we're sending something to them because of a zoning issue, you don't have to deny the application. Because if you deny the application, you're forcing them to
Right.
start the whole process over.
Yeah, then that's it.
And you don't, there isn't a reason to do that.
Okay. Calendar look like? I know it's pretty full coming up.
Pretty full. Well, we'd certainly want to leave them enough time so that if their decision was to seek, well, the redesign probably could happen faster, but if they seek ZBA judgment, that could be a little bit longer, depending on how quickly they could get application in.
It's what, the second Thursday of the month, so they probably couldn't get into that till the 9th of April.
So our next public hearing date, March 17, in 2 weeks, that's full anyway. 31st, which is not a normal meeting date, but which we're going to be talking about as a meeting date, is full. do have our first meeting in April, which is on April 7. And then the next public hearing after that is April 21.
So we would ask to be continued to April 7th.
So moved.
Second,
Okay,
If they go to ZBA, they won't have time to do that.
you'll have to continue.
Yeah, they can request a continuance again.
Right, is there anything else? that-
okay, but if there's well, we're in discussion now. If there's a high likelihood that they're gonna ask for a continuance, I mean, one of the things that the board was gonna consider tonight is, since we're having a meeting on the 31st, and we have nothing else right now scheduled for April 7th, whether or not we were gonna have that April 7th meeting. If you really think that we can do this on April 7th, I'm fine with that.
Well, I'm thinking,
I think there's so much,
We have enough
I
stuff.
think there's so much on the table, we really
Right,
should
we
have
have to-
April 7th.
I think we have to do April 7th.
Yeah, there's too much going on, so I think vote not to.
Because there's so many on the agenda tonight, and so much on the agenda on the 17th.
Yep. Okay. So, Lynn, you made the motion?
No,
No. I did. Chris made the motion to continue to April 7th.
April 7th.
Do we want to specify any plans?
Yeah,
changes?
it's calendar for the plan requirement.
how many, what, 10 days ahead? Plans in by March 26th.
Plans in by March 26th.
At noon.
Okay, so that's the motion by Chris, second by Lynn, to continue this hearing to April 7. We do them all at 6, we state the time at 6:45. Right now, it looks like you're gonna be early on that date, so it should be pretty close to that 6:45 time. With any new plans to be received in planning board office by March 26 at noon. Anything further on that discussion from the board? All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. We'll see you then. All right, and this hearing ended at 7:53.
I don't know how we approve this one.
Pardon?
How do we approve Bluestone with a 25-foot setback?
Is it residential?
Because it's residential.
That's only requires a 20-foot.
But it was against commercial.
I'm sitting here thinking, how the hell did we do that?
Yeah. Could I have any of these plans back for this?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we'll call this one starting at 7:55. It is Diamond Oaks Golf Club LLC, 7 Route 125, tax map R3, lots 4 and 4, land unit 3. The legal notice reads that the applicant is seeking approval to allow for the construction of a full dormer addition to the second floor storage area of the existing clubhouse to be used for storage of items associated with the golf course only. And looks like Mr. Zilch is here on behalf of the applicant. Does anybody need plans? Oh, wait a minute, there. Where's that set that just went? That's bigger than these.
That's the age restricted condo.
This would be the set property.
Yeah, that would be, this is just a 3-sheet set.
Which would be this.
Yes. Take it, everybody else is all set?
Thank you. You guys all set with that plan?
Yep.
Or do you want a bigger one?
No, this one's good.
Glenn, you got one?
I do, thank you.
Dennis, you've got one. Steve can look at that one. Okay, Charlie, would you introduce yourself, please, and then talk to us about the application?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Charlie Zilch from SCC and Associates, here on behalf of Jim Dufresne of Diamond Oaks Golf Club LLC. He is the applicant as well as the owner. This is for his amended site plan at Granite Fields for a proposed dormer addition to the existing clubhouse. I'm sure you're all familiar with the property. I'll just kind of give you a brief overview. The property is identified as tax map R3, lot 4. This is land unit 3, and is part of the Village at Granite Fields condominium. Property is located on Route 125 and contains approximately 169 acres. The entire site lies in the commercial 3 zone. The property currently supports several commercial and residential uses. The primary commercial use is as an 18-hole golf course. This golf course utilizes the majority of the property, particularly to the eastern portion of the site, but located adjacent to the Route 125 access on the west side of the property is the supporting clubhouse. This clubhouse is 2 stories and is utilized for the commercial use only. The building is served by an on-site community well and its own individual septic system. The site is accessed via a private roadway known as Diamond Oaks Boulevard, from where it commences at Route 125. It then transitions into Bent Grass Circle once it gets past the clubhouse and enters into the residential condominium development beyond the clubhouse. So if you could just turn to sheet 2. The intent of the application is pretty straightforward. This is focused on the existing clubhouse. Currently, the first floor of the building is utilized for office space, obviously the clubhouse, and golf cart and equipment storage. The second floor is unoccupied and unimproved and is utilized for storage associated with the golf course operations only. If you take a look at sheet 3, you'll see a rendering there for this dormer addition. The proposal is, as I said, is simply requesting approval to add a dormer to the southerly end of the second floor of the clubhouse for additional storage. The dormer will remain within the footprint of the existing building. So as I'm sure you're well aware, the next application to be heard tonight is a request to convert this second floor space to condominiums. This request is separate from that, and whether the subsequent application fails or passes, the owner would still like to make this modification to the building. It improves his usable space. It's also a nice addition to the side of the building. So that's why we separated the 2 applications. Like I said, he wants to build this regardless of the outcome of the second application for tonight. No storage of hazardous materials, just for golf course material, storage and supply. That's it.
Okay. Well, it sounds simple enough. Let's see where we go with it.
Okay. Well, I'd like to keep it simple.
I sort of thought the last one might have been a little simple, but no. Okay. I know that, Dennis, you didn't comment on this one.
I did not, because it's mostly a building issue, so I took a quick look at it. I didn't spend much time on it, so I didn't
doesn't change the impervious surface of the lot, so stormwater should not be an issue. Stormwater management should not be an issue with this. Glenn, did you make comments?
I basically said, you know, you need to invoke jurisdiction. This is the first hearing. But,
Do you see any issues to identify?
I say there is no change to the footprint of the clubhouse. The use would require no additional site improvements, so that was.
Okay. So how about a motion to invoke jurisdiction on the plan?
So moved.
Motion by Peter Coffin.
Second.
Second by Chris. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That's unanimous. So the 65-day clock starts, and the board considers the plan complete enough to further consider it. Questions from the board?
Are these windows just for aesthetics? Yeah.
Yes. And should
Nice,
should the second application be successful, then that'll be integrated as part of the units.
Wasn't the same location as opposed to.
Yep.
Okay, this is a public hearing. I'll open the public comment section of the hearing. If there is anyone here who has a comment or a question on this application, now is your opportunity. Yes? No? No? Okay, we'll close the public comment. There appears to be none. Questions from the board further? Glenn, you didn't have anything else?
Nope.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
That's your motion. Motion by Chris to approve the plans as presented, second by Mr. Wilson. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, that carries unanimous.
That's gonna be
Thank
a
you
record
very
for
much.
you, Charlie.
There's a record, 65 days, is now 60.
We knew you'd eventually get it right.
Exactly.
And that hearing ended at 8:04. Are we dealing with the same set of plans next, or is it a different?
No, it's a separate set of plans. And it's a, Mr. Chairman, it's a 7-sheet plan.
I'm coming back just in time.
Yeah, thank you.
Christmas.
Okay, we'll start this hearing at 8:05. And let's see, the legal notice reads, this is for the same property that we just dealt with. It's Diamond Oaks Golf Club LLC, 7 Route 125, tax map R3, lots 4 and 4, land unit 3. The application is for an amended site plan that seeks approval to construct 7 one-bedroom residential age-restricted condominium units for veterans within the unfinished usable area of the upper second floor of the existing clubhouse. Assuming we're talking about the same structure that we just approved the dormer for. All right. So, Mr. Zilch, you're now joined by somebody else. If you gentlemen would introduce each other to us.
Sure.
I'm joined by Charles Cleary of Wadley Star and Peters, attorney for the applicant.
Charlie, are you going to do the intro?
Sure, if you'd like, I can give you a presentation on this as well.
Please.
Sure. Again, on behalf of Jim Dufresne, this time for his amended site plan at Granite Fields for a proposed request for conversion to condominium to be known as Veterans Residence at Granite Fields. This application is for the same property and structure identified in the previous application, so I don't think I really need to go through that again. If you want, just take a look at page 2 of the plan set. And as with that application, the focus is again the clubhouse. As discussed, this clubhouse serves the existing golf course with the first floor providing office space, clubhouse, and golf cart and equipment storage. The second floor is unoccupied and unimproved and is utilized for storage associated with golf course operations only. Maybe I'll jump you over to sheet 6 now, if you could take a look at that. So as noted, this is a proposal to maintain the lower floor use as a clubhouse and convert the unfinished usable area, the upper second floor of the clubhouse, to condominium units. Specifically, to convert the approximately 6,200 square feet of usable floor space to 7 one-bedroom, fully contained condominium units restricted to age 55 and up and marketed towards elderly veterans. The proposed units will feature full utilities, in a sense, kitchens, baths, laundry, etc., with one-bedroom living. Sizes of the units range from 600 square feet up to 840 square feet. Whereas the building is located within 1,000 feet of the center line of Route 125, it is restricted to commercial use only. A variance has been granted to allow the entire second floor space to be converted to elderly residential use and is noted on the plans, and I gave you a copy of that variance with the application. Maybe direct your attention to sheet 3 now. So currently, as you can see, parking is shared on the west side of the existing building with the adjacent indoor sports building. We're proposing a new parking area on the east side of the building, on the opposite side. That will be exclusive to the residents of the proposed condominiums. This new parking area will feature 14 parking spaces, that's 2 spaces per each unit, with some of the spaces dedicated to handicap parking. As you can see, the building is handicapped accessible from the existing parking area, and it will also be from the proposed parking area as well. Back to sheet 6 one more time. I'm going to jump you around this plan set just a little bit here. So as shown, the walkway leading from the proposed parking area on the east side of the building leads to a doorway on the east side of the building. Upon entering, there will be an elevator for handicapped access to the second floor. That will be in addition to the stair access. To accommodate the slight floor height difference of the second floor, a chair lift will be provided as well. So you can see how you get into the second side of that, or the easterly side of that building, down the hallway, and then you have a central elevator for access, or handicap access to the second floor. And back to sheet 3, and I'll let you stay on that sheet for the rest of this. So in support of the 7-bedroom elderly condominium units, an additional leach field shall be constructed adjacent to the existing leach field that serves the clubhouse located across Bentgrass Circle. Sewage loading adds only an additional 875 gallons per day. These are elderly units. Anticipated flow from each unit is only 125 gallons a day, so not a huge increase in sewage flow with this proposal. The existing community well that serves the building, as well as the existing 34-lot condominium community that I mentioned beyond the clubhouse, will be used for the proposed condominiums of these additional 7 units. This well is operated and maintained by Hampstead Area Water Company, whom recently secured the approval for the expansion from NHDES. So that has been submitted and approved and so noted on the plans. The only impervious area being added is the proposed parking area. Steve Cummings, PE, has provided our drainage and erosion control plan, which simply captures stormwater flow, or sheet flow, from this parking area and directs it to the existing drainage basin already constructed nearby. A drainage report was included with the application, and I'm sure Dennis has had a chance to take a look at that as well. In an effort to ensure all wetland setbacks are maintained, we asked our wetland scientist, Mark Jacobs, who did the original mapping out here, to revisit the site and update the mapping and associated wetland limits. His report is included along with the original report that was submitted for the original application. I'd asked Charlie Cleary to be with me tonight. He has prepared the declaration of condominium and the bylaw documents supporting the proposal. I thought it'd be nice to have him here with us tonight if you had any questions regarding that and the limitation to the elderly and the veteran use as well. Those documents were submitted with the application, and a copy had been included. So there's 3 state approvals required with this. NHDES for the water supply, as we had mentioned. Also, NHDES septic system, which has been applied for and is currently under review. And then the final one is DES subdivision for conversion to condominium, and that has been applied for and is currently under review. As noted, there was only 1 variance that has been obtained. As far as I know, there are no known waivers submitted with this application or needed. Questions?
Before I turn it over to Glenn and to Dennis, just a clarification, since this is doing a conversion to condo, this falls under subdivision, right? Is that how the application was submitted? Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's age restricted. And what's the minimum age?
55 and over.
55 and over. And it sounded like there'd be a veteran's preference, but not a veteran's requirement.
No, based on the ZBA approval, it is a veteran's requirement.
Ah, okay. Because I was looking for the ZBA decision and I didn't see it. I'm sure we have it, I just didn't see it.
Yeah, we went around the barn a few times on that, and the applicant's prepared to make it committed to veterans.
Well, obviously, if the variance was granted for that, then that's what it is.
Yeah.
I'll send us a copy.
I'm sorry?
I'll send us a copy of the minutes.
Dennis or Glenn, would you, I know both of you have done comments for this, and Charlie, do you have copies of this at this point?
I just received Dennis. I've had a chance to look at Glenn's. Okay, just briefly.
Dennis?
Sure, I'll go first. So I looked at it from site plan regulations. It's also subdivision, like you say, but I looked at it also from site plan. And I know Charlie mentioned about a wetland report, but Article 2025B, the wetland setback is shown as 67 feet. Typically, a functional analysis should be provided according to Table 8 to verify proper buffer setback. Number 2, the plan shows a location of a gas meter. Perhaps a source should be provided. I don't know if there's a tank in the ground or something there to supply gas, so that probably should be on the plan. Number 3, sheet 1, note 18 should reference 908-16-6, not 16-9, which is part of the requirements for stormwater management and inspections. Number 4, Article 110-6B1 and 904-6D, the buffer. Should there be a 50-foot vegetated buffer from residential age restricted development to on land unit 4, similar to what we talked about at the last meeting. So, number 5, Article 110-7B, the ordinance allows a maximum coverage of 75% and provide percentage of impervious lot cover, which I didn't see on the plan, so I don't know. You may have done that, Charlie, but I didn't see that.
I don't believe I did provide that. I'll have to get that for you.
Number 6, 904-5G24, building slab elevation and location of entrance should be provided. G25 requires showing the height of the building. 904-5G28, provide a copy of the sanitary disposal system plan for review. G29, the location and detail for the solid waste container, dumpster. 904-6H, parking area, typical cross-section does not meet the town requirements. It shows 4 inches of crushed gravel instead of 6, and 2 inches plus 1 inches of surface pavement instead of 2.5 and 1.5. Number 10, Article 904, 11, and 12, a bond is required for engineering inspections of on-site improvements. And 907-3A, performance guarantee amount is required, finalized prior to approval. 907-4A is the guarantee must be in place prior to construction on the site. And those are the comments I had at this time.
Thank you. Glenn?
Sure. All right, I have, from the information presented, it is impossible to know if the building coverage for land unit 3 has been exceeded. The applicant needs to provide both existing and proposed impervious coverage. There are wetlands on both sides of land unit 3. On one side, the plan indicates that the wetland setback of 65 feet is met because the proposed parking lot is 67 feet from the edge of wet. Has the board been given the wetlands report that provides, that proves a 65-foot setback is all that is required?
Before you go any further, does that relate to the question that Dennis was asking?
Yeah, that's
about
exactly
the functional value of the wetlands?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, what I can tell you is, like I said, Mark Jacobs was involved in the original delineation. We asked him back on this to ensure that the wetland delineation is still sound from what it was originally. And what he informs me with his original report, he did do a value and function assessment of the wetlands, and he came up with a buffer of less than the 65 feet. From that, I believe the report was kicked over to Rockingham Conservation. Mike Cuomo reviewed it on behalf of the planning board, and he added some additional setback onto it, and everybody agreed to a 65-foot setback, and that was the setback that was applied to the previous application. The wetlands are unchanged. I would believe that the 65-foot setback should remain.
Okay, so all of this, the calculations and the justification for the determining the function of the wetlands and the appropriate setback was done for the original application, and you're using that for this. You probably should have a copy of that to go along with this application as well, just so that it's all together. But
I do believe I did submit that with it. That
okay.
Original, right, the original report.
Okay, all right. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. No setback is offered for the wetland located to the southwest of the proposed construction. This information needs to be provided predominantly not for the use across Bent Grass Circle, but for the septic system information that's shown on the other side of Bent Grass Circle. So I'm sure that if that report is still in hand, we can verify those distances.
Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
The plan indicates no 4K area for the proposed septic expansion and offers only one test pit. 2 test pits are required, and the 4K area needs to be detailed on the site plan to ensure necessary separation from the adjacent wetland. Parking lot snow storage is not appropriate in the wetland setback area, and when I speak to that, I'm speaking about the small snow storage area as shown on sheet 3 on the northern side of the parking lot. Condominium documents for these units are necessary and must be reviewed by council. They've been submitted. I don't believe we've sent them to council yet, so I'll make sure that happens. How is water provided to the units? These lines should be detailed on the site plan. Is a dumpster proposed for these units? If so, the plan should detail its location. The plan shows 2 parking spaces for each unit. 904.15 parking requirements indicates that age-restricted units require 3 parking spaces per unit. The same regulation requires 2 spaces for 1-bedroom units. The planning board should determine which standard should apply to these units. And number 10, although floor plans are not my specialty, as are writing comments sometimes, because what I mean to say is I am not able to determine that each unit has 2 readily accessible exits, not units, as required by section 301.5 rented apartments in the zoning ordinance. Windows are not allowed to serve this purpose, so I couldn't see 2 units to every, 2 exits to every unit, so that will be something that'll have to be shown. And those are my comments.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. I think I'm going to take the opportunity to read department comments at this time. And there are a couple here that are substantial. Highway has no comment. That's the easy one. Health Department also has no comment. Okay, building. There are 7 items. Number 1, does the vet's parking lot follow the downhill slope of the land, or is the proposed lot meant to be level? Maybe somebody could...
There is a slight grade across that parking lot.
Okay.
It's a very slight grade. It's just designed to move.
7%.
I'm assuming he's asking that because of the intended residents being 55 and older, and, you know, perhaps maybe having disabilities as well. Maybe he was concerned about the slope, I don't know.
Well, it's 7%, so the concern is if you're parked like this, how do you open the door?
Oh, hold it. Okay.
That could be what the concern is opening the door on the 7% grades.
Charlie, is that what it is, 7%?
It appears to be 7%, correct.
Number 2, van parking space should be 11 feet wide, not 9 feet wide, as shown on plan number 5. It says it's a DOT requirement. I don't know.
Expecting a 9-foot wide van accessible aisle sometime in several different towns, and never heard that, but I can certainly take a look at it.
Okay. Number 3, the handicap parking area should be level in all directions, and in parentheses, 1 inch to 50-foot slope maximum is ADA required.
I can make that, if it doesn't apply, I can make that adjustment.
Okay. I mean, I'm just reading these, I don't know what the regs are, but this is coming from the building inspector. Presumably, you know, when it comes time to review this in the field, he'll be looking at these things. Number 4, show the veterans entrance door area with dimensions for ADA compliance. Number 5, show safe path of travel parentheses, 50 feet plus or minus, through garage for elevator entry and exit.
Could you please repeat that?
Show safe path of travel, 50 feet plus or minus, through garage for elevator entry and exit. Again, I don't know if he's referring to a specific ADA requirement or not. Number 6, was a wetland determination report conducted for the 65-foot setback, and we've discussed that. Number 7, research, relocate gas meter tank exiting appears to be in proposed, existing appears to be in proposed walkway. Location differs from as shown on sheet number 2. If someone's looking at a plan, does that make sense? He's saying research, relocate gas slash meter tank. Existing appears to be in proposed walkway. Location differs from as shown on sheet number 2. So it sounds like there are a couple of issues wrapped up in that one comment. One is that there's some things might be shown differently on different sheets.
Well, fortunately, I'll be meeting with him on Thursday morning. I can get some clarification on that.
Okay. All right. Fire department. There are 3 comments. 1, require fire protection engineer to review plans on behalf of the town, and in parentheses, SFC engineering to be hired on behalf of the town. So, a comment and then a very specific request. Number 2, update Knox box with unit keys. So apparently there's already a Knox box there, and they need to be updated with keys for individual units, sounds like. And number 3, update fire alarm to include dwelling units. Right, the next one, those are department comments. I do have one from a resident of Mulligan Way, but I think I'll hold that until we do the public, which I could do now.
Is that what you're gonna choose to do?
I think I will. All right, so I'm gonna open the public comment period, and I'll start with the one that we have in the file. Well, I'm going to read it, but I'd like to know if Mr. Bruce Bork is in the audience. People are smiling, but I don't see a hand. No. This is dated February 27th of 2020. It's addressed to this board, and it says, as a resident of the Granite Field condo community, I wish to express my opposition to granting the variances referenced in the above letter. Variances. That was for ZBA. Okay, well, that's not a comment for us then. Okay.
Did it say to the ZBA, or did it say to the planning board?
It doesn't say, it just says, dear Chairman.
What's it dated?
27 February. So that was after ZBA.
Oh, yeah, way after ZBA.
It was a long time ago.
All right, well, okay.
So the comment.
So,
Not relevant about the variance, but there's any specific.
all right, it looks as though he's attached an abutter notice. All right, let me read the second All right, I wish to express my opposition to granting the variance as referenced in the above letter. This will do nothing to further bring down, our property values which already suffered due to the ongoing conflict with the developer, Hawks Ridge Realty, and the town of Kingston. Okay, the way he phrased that, I think, is not what he intended, but that's what it says. And then he's attached to that, looks like a butter notice is sent on January 28. Applicant is Diamond Oaks. Date of hearing is tonight. Place of hearing, purpose of hearing, okay. So it's basically the notice for this hearing. I'm not sure.
You read it, I appreciate that.
Is there any other public comment that, that anyone would like to make for this hearing? No? And if you could state your name and address, please?
Sure. Holly Pouliot, 6 Bent Grass Circle.
You said it
Holly.
was Holly?
Yes. Yes. I would like some clarification. Is the intended condominiums septic to be joined to the septic system that is used by the condo association behind the golf course? I didn't understand that part.
Could you clarify that, Charlie?
It's not going to be tied in with the condominium development. It's on its own separate individual leach field on the other side of Bent Grass Circle.
Okay. And water system?
It will be tied to the community water system as they are now. And like I said, we have approval from NHDES for the modest expansion.
What is NHDDS?
The Department of Environmental Services, which is the state entity that regulates that.
Okay. Okay. And is that owned by Hawks Ridge?
The water?
Yeah, Hawks Ridge is the operator.
No, I'm sorry. Hampstead Area Water Company is the operator.
Is the operator, and Hawks Ridge is the owner.
Hawks Ridge is the owner.
Correct.
And this is considered a community?
It is a community water
system.
And will the condominiums for the vets pay into the homeowner association for the condominium behind for plowing and landscaping and trash pickup?
Okay, so the question is sort of a general one about will these condo units contribute to to help pay for the services that I'm assuming that your area does?
Yes.
Charlie?
I'm sure it's going to be proportionate. Some of the money, I'm sure that for these 7 units will be for maintenance of the water system, and then for their own parking area, as well as their own septic system. So I imagine there's probably going to be some sort of a distribution of those condo fees.
Mr. Cleary, is that outlined in your documentation?
It is to some extent. I'm not sure we've dug down all the way into exactly what they'll contribute, but they will be contributing towards the overall maintenance upkeep of the area. They wouldn't be necessarily contributing all the way down to your development, but they will be contributing.
All right, because we do have a common access way, and I was just curious about that.
So there will be fees paid that would go toward maintaining that?
Yes, some portion.
Some portion.
And will they be under the same bylaws that our condo association is under?
No, they will not. They'll have their own set of bylaws.
Okay.
They're such a small enclosed community.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Holly, could I just get your last name again?
Pouliot. Pouliot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll close public comment on this. Okay. Questions from the board?
I have a question for Glenn or for anybody, since I'm back new to this, but floor plan has nothing to do with this, correct?
Not normally, no. Only in this case.
I see several issues with floor plan.
Yeah, only because it's a
That's
condominium.
not what we're considering, right? Okay, just want to make sure.
Can we, I hate to bring this up again, but Dennis brought up the issue of the buffering, but this is residential.
It's mixed use.
Well, it's residential on top of it.
Well, it's.
What is the clubhouse? Is
Well, the
that
commercial's
recreational?
already there. And what's being added is residential. And it's a budding residential.
The building meets a setback, but it's the new parking area that does not. Doesn't meet the
Okay.
Now, these aren't lot lines either. These are land unit areas. They're limits of condominium ownership.
Right, so we look at those, though, for all intents and purposes, as lot lines.
One concern is looks like it's about 40 feet from the other condos line, the other land unit. But if you have to expand to meet ADA requirements for the handicap parking, is that something you can go farther to the north with, the northeast? So you're not coming closer to the other condominium houses? See where the corner of the parking lot, it runs about 40 feet from the land unit boundary between LU4 and LU3. And I know we
I've
discussed
got
it.
about 37 to 38 feet.
Right, yeah.
From that land unit line.
Right. So the
corner of the parking.
So that if you had to expand that parking to make it wider, I mean, the stuff that the building inspector talked about, the 11 foot instead of 9 foot for vans and the handicap accessible spots, is that something you can? I don't know the topography here. Is that something you can expand away from the land unit 3?
If, to accommodate the slightly wider van accessible aisle, I would just push this, the westerly side of our proposed parking lot. There's 7 spaces on that side. I would just push that ever so slightly further to the north.
Okay.
Still well outside the wetland setback, so it really wouldn't affect the width of the parking area at all.
Right.
Just the length of it.
How wide is the walkway you have?
That walkway is 5 feet wide.
The handicap walkway?
Yes.
And are they paved?
Yes.
So when they enter the first floor, because we don't have plans for the first floor, is there a private route to go to the elevators and stairs, or is it just right through the garage and clubhouse?
There is a separate entrance as you come in. If you look at the, on practice sheet 2 kind of shows it a little bit better. On the west side of the building, you see the paved walkway. On the northwest side of the building.
Yep.
That leads to a walkway and handicap ramp. That has a door that goes directly into the clubhouse, and then there's another door beyond that, right? Gets you into the area that would be the garage space.
Yes, for the fire department, you can have, I guess, CEC for the panel come in and inspect, but are you gonna be able to create second entrances or exits, I guess, for each unit?
Well, currently, each unit has one access, and there's two accesses to get into the buildable area, that second floor area. You can come in from both the west and east sides of this building to get there. There's two sets of staircases, and we'll have an elevator as well.
But if that's interior.
That's why he's asking for the fire engineer.
Glenn, any going back to the buffer issue, any thoughts about that? What do we have for separation now for the new parking to the lot line?
From the corner, Charlie's saying, from the far corner away from the building, so the eastern corner of the parking lot, it's about 37 feet, he said, to the land unit line.
At its closest point?
At its closest point.
Yeah. If it were just for argument's sake, if it were shifted a little bit to the north, it would be going toward
the wetland. The wetland buffer. So if there's gonna be any shifting of it, we're gonna shift it west towards the building. But we also want to accommodate, this is where the garage door is on the easterly side of the building there. That's where the golf carts come out and out to the golf course from there. So we want to at least leave some access room for them to get by as well.
It seems like this buffer issue is in rules and regulations as opposed to the cited ordinance on this one anyway.
Is there a difference?
For the zoning ordinance, it says, setbacks for structures, and it specifically says, structures for this requirement are defined as buildings and septic systems. And doesn't include parking lots, so it's not, so it's 2, if you look at number 2.
2A, residential setback.
Okay, well, that one wasn't cited in your comment, so I didn't go down that one.
Sorry, Chris.
Can we read that, Dennis, what does that say?
Yeah, I can read that. It's under commercial zone 3C. It's 110.6B setbacks, number 2. It said setbacks for other improvements. Other improvements for this requirement are defined as storage areas, display areas, parking areas, access lanes, drainage systems, etc., but not landscaping or structures as defined above, and not curb cuts for access to road or street or for access to adjoining lots. Under A, it says residential setback, side or rear, 50 feet when abutting a residential zone. And B, it says otherwise, front 15, side 10, rear 10, and then it goes on to talk about parking areas. C, in cases where adjoining lots wish to share a parking area, the parking areas can be built up to the property line. So that's if they share them. And then the D, it says in cases where 2 or more other improvement setback numbers apply, the largest number is to be used. Planning board can allow infringement onto an other improvement non-residential setback as long as some green space is provided elsewhere in return. So on part A, it says 50 feet when abutting a residential zone. That's kind of what I was looking at, what I brought up. So looking at this, the corner of the building is 50 feet from the line, and that 50-foot parallel line nips into the first handicap parking space, and then includes the first full parking space and diagonally across the second one on that westerly side, on that easterly side, and also cuts halfway through the snow storage area.
Okay, just to confirm, is this a setback that's applied or a buffer that's applied to separate a commercial from a residential use? Because this is a residential parking lot supporting a residential use. I don't know if that makes a difference. It would seem that it would.
Well, that's sort of why I was asking the question earlier on, and I mentioned that this is in fact a residential activity adjoining or abutting another residential.
Well, it's a C3 zone. C3 zone, it's under the C3 zone is what it's talking about.
So any parking lot in the C3 zone, regardless of its use, must have a setback for a residential area?
I'm not interpreting it, I'm just reading it. It's up to these people to deal with that.
Well, we're dealing with a situation that it's in a commercial zone, but the applicant has been granted a variance to allow some
I would say,
residential.
because this parking lot is exclusive to residential use. If it was an expansion of the parking lot to support the clubhouse and the residential use, I think we'd have an issue.
Just to support that, we do have a proposed sign basically saying that the sign's supposed to say parking for veterans, residents, and Granite Fields only. So it is strictly parking for the residential use.
You bet people who are in those units are gonna get ticked off if all the golfers decide to park up there.
Is there any vegetation between that parking lot and the land unit line? Or is it grass essentially?
I think it's a mix. I think there's some shrub, I think there's some grass and some standing trees here and there. That area had been exposed, that's where the drainage system eventually drains to. It comes across bent grass circle and then ultimately to fairly large detention basin area. Over time, it'll fill back in.
Seems to me the requirement is for buffering the commercial use from a residential use. And that's not what's being proposed here. So I think as long as the board goes on record as stating that they don't feel the setback applies because it's a parking area for strictly residential use, you've done what's necessary.
I mean, ultimately, this is the best location for the parking area. It's adjacent, easily accessible to the building, and we meet the wetland setback. So it just works here.
Other thoughts from the board on this issue?
I think that's where this differs from what we talked about earlier. It's different commercial, this is residential. I think we have to make the use. The only thing we proposed in this plan is changes. Quite frankly, it's so close to 50. It's more than 20.
Is the board satisfied with that particular issue at this time? Other issues, other questions?
Can we get the board to talk about that inconsistency in the parking standard?
Was that part of your comments, Glenn?
Yeah. The parking standard that I'm speaking to is in site plan.
You're talking about the 2 and 3 space. Can they use the other parking lot to gain those other spaces?
So the parking standards is a regulation. All right, so the board has some flexibility there then.
Because 3 spaces for 1 bedroom would be a visitor more than likely.
But it only applies to age restricted, right, for 3 spaces? You know why that? It's, as I was reading, it's really odd. It's elderly housing in an independent unit, you need 3 spaces.
I know why that's in there. I remember the conversation. Husband, wife, caretaker.
But caretaker doesn't,
Takes a space. I remember that conversation we had.
except that isn't, do you often have caretakers in independent units? You have them in assisted units, don't you? Because we have a requirement for elderly housing assisted living.
Or visitor.
And that's 2 per dwelling unit plus 1 for each employee. It's just odd to me. I never thought about it, I guess, before.
So if we go by the reg, it would need to be 3.
If we go by the reg,
Spaces.
a 1-bedroom apartment needs two spaces per unit. But if it's an age restricted, if it's an elderly housing independent unit, it says 3 per dwelling unit.
That's exactly why we did it. I remember that.
I mean, even if it's not a caretaker, it might be someone coming in for providing services of some kind.
Conversation was about Ash Drive, where they have 2 bedrooms, and they were having a son or daughter might visit for a weekend, 3 cars.
And the numbers,
Ash Drive, you had the ability, because those were 2-bedroom units. These are 1-bedroom units.
That was what caused the problem, is it was not supposed to be 2 bedroom, it was supposed to be 1, but everybody was making the other room into another bedroom. But my point is, can they use the other parking lot, consider that for visitor parking?
I think you're muddying the waters by doing that, by blending the facilities that are established for the clubhouse with the facilities that are established for the dwelling units.
Okay, that's just a question, because I know a lot of places have, like Lamplighter has unit parking, and then they have a visitor parking lot away from everything.
And I think we did that with used third parking areas, sometimes a little bit remote and more.
So I mean, the way I look at this is we have a standard for elderly housing, and it includes 3. So that if that is not, if the board does not feel that that's appropriate, this is in the site plan review regulations. You can change that upon a request.
for a waiver. So how many residential units? 7?
7.
And how many spaces?
14. It would need 7 additional spaces.
Well, do the 2 handicapped spaces are included in the 14?
They are.
So presumably you'd have,
They're part of the 14.
right.
Which makes you believe they're all disabled, so they're gonna be fighting over those 2 spots.
Well, either that's not enough
Or no
handicap spaces, or you have the 2 spaces have to be left empty because
Nobody's disabled.
qualified for those spots, in which case there should be 14 other spaces. And the 2, that's just the ratio.
But does it say that's a requirement, that they have to be non-handicap provided spaces, or they just have to have 2 spaces?
Dennis?
So I was wondering in the condo documents if each space would be numbered, so each unit would have a designated parking space, because sometimes that's what's done in condo units too, so possibly that could be done, designate which parking spaces are for which unit.
So, 2 points on that. It's a good point, Dennis. There's 2 ways to do it. Set it up as common area, and they can use it first served basis, or limited common areas, you're saying, and assign each unit 2 spaces throughout.
Then the question would be, what happens with handicap? I get those.
Yeah, I could probably draft something about that, but it's not gonna be really fine-tuned. On the parking space number issue, it's a 55 and older condominium. We didn't jump to that 65 and older, and it's not your other elderly housing, so I was surprised to see the additional unit for caretaker on a 55 and older, being over 55.
Well, it's not necessarily caretaker, but visitor.
Yeah, that would apply to any condominium.
Yeah. I have another thought. I can add 2 additional parking spaces at the very end of this parking area and still meet the wetland setback.
On the north side?
On the very north end of it. I could put 2 parking spaces there, and that would give you 14 plus the 2 handicap.
So that would get you at least to 2 per unit.
2 per unit, and then 2
Plus
handicap
the 2
spaces.
handicaps.
That makes the drafting easier.
So if we were gonna require a waiver, I would be comfortable with that based off of the one bedroom plans and the requirements of 2 spots for the 1 unit.
Other thoughts from the board on that? I mean, we don't have a waiver request in front of us, but I'm sure they could draft one.
No, the waiver request would be for the 3 versus 2 parking spaces.
We are leaning towards assigning them to the units.
If you're gonna construct 2 more parking spaces, you don't, it's really
Tough.
it's tough to say who gets a handicap and who doesn't.
Right, well, yeah, if you were to add the 2 spaces, then you'd be able to assign 2 to each unit, and then you'd have 2 open.
2 floating
2
handicap
open
spaces.
handicap spaces, which could be used for visitors or, anyone who needs that type of space. Now, I suppose if you had a tenant, that needed a handicap space, probably want to have some flexibility in the wording to be able to assign one of those 2.
Yeah. Very good point. It becomes a visitor space in that situation.
Is the board of a mind to waiver request on this? Would you like a waiver request in front of us before you commit?
Yes, you'd like to waive the If I was presented with that waiver request, I would vote in favor of it.
Mr. Chairman, obviously this is, we're not seeking approval tonight, so upon resubmittal, I could submit a waiver request for that as well.
Well, we'd need that anyway to take it, to act on it. I was just trying to take the temperature of
We can write them.
Well,
Yeah, that's which.
right, but it's more appropriate for it to be something along with.
There's also a chance that a parking company would say, put 7 units in that space. Then the parking would be less of an issue anyway.
Okay, we have not yet. Glenn, are you comfortable with us taking jurisdiction on this? I mean, there were some significant
I'm
issues.
happy to hear that the report has actually been, the wetland report has actually been submitted. That helps me feel more comfortable with that proposal. Because I thought it was gonna be something that was much more up in the So I guess I would say yes, I am comfortable. Start at 65-day clock.
Is anyone prepared to make that motion?
One second.
Jurisdiction. Motion by Chris, second by Peter Coffin, to accept this plan as complete enough for further consideration, otherwise known as invoking jurisdiction, and the 65-day statutory clock for this board to make a decision. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That carries unanimously. Do we have other things to discuss before deciding on when we're going to continue this? Does the applicant have more questions?
You're the one who, yeah.
I do. No, there was one suggestion by the fire department for SFC to review the plan set.
Yep.
I don't have any opposition to that. I'd gladly send along a set of plans. Just want to know how is that arranged? Is that something that Glenn would take care of for us, or do we?
I don't know.
Yeah, you can, yes, we'll arrange that through our office.
And they basically just draw from the professional review and engineering account,
Correct.
which has been updated as of yesterday, by the way, as requested.
Otherwise, more money was added.
Yep.
Okay.
And I know you've been taking copious notes, and you feel like you're comfortable enough with what needs to be brought in next time?
Yes. Okay. Yes. No, pretty much everything here. Like I said, I'll get clarification from the building inspector, and then we'll send everything off to SFC for their review as well.
Charlie, would you be comfortable with that previously April 7th date that we talked about the other, or is that too soon? Our other meetings through the rest of this month?
Keeping in mind that plans would be due March 26. If not April 7, then it would be the 21st.
I think probably the 21st would be better.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, how about the review of the company documents by the council?
Yes, we need to do that.
Take care of that as well.
Yep. Does the applicant have any more questions before we decide on continuance?
You want to revise those with the parking discussion before we send them?
Yes, so when do you need them back from me?
If you're going to the 21st, if you could do that in, say, 10 days or 2 weeks. That would still give council a month.
What would the date be for plan submittal for the 21st? Sorry? April 9th.
I mean, it would.
Go ahead, you'd rather have them earlier?
I'd really like them the week before, actually, if we could.
The second?
April 2nd?
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I said I was okay with the 9th.
Other questions from the board?
So, continuance.
So, motion by Chris.
Second.
Second by Richard to continue this hearing to April 21st. We assign everything to 6:45. Right now, you're the first on the agenda, so 6:45 it would be. and plans to be received by noon, no later than noon on April 2nd, is the motion. Discussion? All in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Abstentions? And that carries unanimously. So thank you, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you for consideration.
You know, work through Glenn on any issues that you have. And yes, exactly. That's where that was my next thing. We're gonna take a 5-minute break or so. Adam? Okay. Okay, we are back. Got some feedback on that, Mike. All right, we're starting this hearing at 9:13. Okay. I'll read the legal notice for this, and then I'll pull. I don't know if we have materials or if we need materials. This is for Dan Parks at 7 Smallpox Road, tax map R19, lot 32. The applicant has submitted an application to amend the approved site plan in order to discuss the approved bond amount with the purpose of lowering the amount to an affordable figure. So apparently it's a request to do a reduction of the bond amount, sounds like. Mr. Parks, you're here. If you could come up to the table, please. And once you get seated, just introduce yourself and give us a kind of an explanation of what it is that you're requesting of us.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dan Parks, 7 Smallpox Road in Kingston. So we have site plan approved, and the bond amount that that you guys approved was around $126,000, and it's a cash bond. So originally my plan was to hire a guy to come in, or a company to come in and dig the sand out and truck it out. And they were going to be responsible for putting up the bond. So I had a guy lined up, and he fell through. He balked at the bond. Then I hired another guy, contracted another guy in town here, who's got a pretty good size operation, but he couldn't afford the bond either. He tried another avenue, maybe getting a temporary access to 125, which would have avoided, using the roads altogether. But that didn't work out with the state. So 6 months went by, and I still haven't dug a yard of sand out of there yet. And so I'd like to start this operation and take it on myself, and hire out some excavation work, and I'll be loading the trucks and sending them on their way every day. But I can't put up $126,000 cash bond. So what I'm asking you to do is to take another look at that amount that you figured out. And basically, I remember the conversation was that, I think it was Glenn, figured out the amount of road area, square footage, and figured out the maximum cost of grinding it and resurfacing it. In all honesty, I could see where. Oh, you didn't do that?
So the bonding estimates come from
Dennis. For Dennis, okay. Well, sorry, I didn't mean to throw you down there on the spot. In all honesty, most of it's a straightaway. There's a really sharp curve right where the river meets the road, pretty much we call it the elbow. And I can see that, yeah, we're gonna have some damage there eventually. And then, maybe down at the end of Smallpox where it meets New Boston Road. Those would be two main areas of concern with trucks turning, Other than that, the majority of the road is pretty straight, and I don't see where, the trucks are gonna cause a lot of damage. Remains to be seen, of course, and there's gonna be a lot of trucking over the next few years. If we could do something that is affordable so that I can get this going and start putting together some money, and then maybe we can look at it in the fall or at the end of the season and determine if the bond amount that we can agree on is workable for you guys, or if you see like there's more damage down the road that we need to increase the bond. At least I would have more money to put up, we could have some sort of an agreement on that as far as like an inspection at the end of the season to decide whether the bond amount is the correct amount for you guys to, you know, for us to work with. So that's where I'm at. I really would like to get started this year in May, and, you know, it's just a matter of putting the money together for this road bond. So, you know, I'm proposing $25,000 or $30,000 bond. I'd like to see what you guys would come up with for a number, and
The number that was established was 120.
about 126,000.
And you're asking for it to be 25,000?
25 or 30.
Okay. Glenn, I know that you provided us some comment. Dennis, I didn't see a written comment, but I'm sure that you...
I didn't, but I can comment on the process we came up with. Typically, things like this, I consult with Rich St. Hilaire, the road agent, and in cases like this, the concern is not knowing the condition of how the road was built. I believe it was probably built to town specifications, but not knowing whether the first 50 trucks that go down the road are going to be causing the damage to the whole road or not, we don't know. We came up with...
Hold it. I didn't. Okay.
So in discussing it with Rich St. Hilaire, it was the type of thing that possibly there can be settlement in the road, so we looked at shimming the road with a certain amount of tonnage of asphalt, and then adding 1.5 inches of a wearing course over the top. So once that's done, typically you add shoulder gravel to the side, but you're going to have a little bit of a berm on the edges, so the shoulder gravel needs to be added to that. So the question is whether over the period of time, whether it be a year or 2 or 3 years that this project gets done, this would cover the cost of damage to the road and repairs to the road in total if there was damage to the whole road. If it was reduced to $30,000 or less, and there was this much damage to the road in the first 6 months to a year, question would be, what would happen at that point in time if the town didn't have enough bond money to fix the road? What would the planning board do then? So that's the question we always talk about when there's a bond for road construction or road repair or road resurfacing. It should be for the benefit of the town. And I understand where Mr. Parks is coming from on starting the project, but there has to be a certain amount of security with the town to make sure that they're covered worst case scenario. So certainly up to you for discussion, but that's where we've talked about with Rich St. Hilaire in the past.
So under the circumstances, your recommendation would stay the same,
I would be uncomfortable about lowering that, not knowing what type of damage is going to be done to the road. I don't know how the road got built. I wasn't involved in building the road. Maybe it would last. It seems like it's okay going in there. It looks pretty good now, but it hasn't had the traffic that this type of an operation is going to have. So my concern would be what would happen if there was serious damage over the first 6 months. All the town be covered.
Could we cover it with some sort of an agreement so we can have an inspection in 6 months?
well, I want to make sure to get board comments, and I want to get Glenn's comments, and then we can see if there's some possible change here. Glenn, anything?
Well, because I'm not really involved with the bond setting process, I don't have a lot to say, although the bond that was established is the one that was agreed to. And it was agreed to because the amount of material that's proposed to be taken out is a staggering amount. So I'm uncomfortable with changing it. But that's a board decision.
I guess my only thought would be is, when Mr. Parks originally made the proposal to this board, and the information was given to our road agent to talk about a bond to be given, we were talking substantial amount of material, a lot of trucks, a substantial amount of trucks drive over that road, probably would have busted it up. I mean, and now he obviously doesn't have that avenue. And I just don't think the material or the amount of vehicles that can be driving over that road as originally planned. And I think if we would have entertained another application saying, hey, I'm gonna take out a lot less with a lot less trucks, it may end up being a different bond amount. That bond amount, I think, was arrived upon, we talked about something like 7,000 trucks coming out of it. Now, those big companies have obviously backed out on the deal, and he's talking about trying to load some trucks by himself. I think it's gonna be a lot smaller scale project.
Well, that's the question is, are we talking about a change in,
That's what it sounds.
well, that would be a site plan review because
Are
of
we
operating,
talking,
because there's fewer.
all I'm
amount.
hearing is a request for a reduction in bond, not a change in
In
the
amount of-
scope of the project.
Right.
Yeah, and like I said, he just talked to all these big people that were gonna haul them out, isn't that correct?
It was the same cubic yardage, and same amount of weight it's coming out of there. He hasn't changed the dimensions of the pond. I mean, he did from the very first proposal.
Yeah.
But the final proposal, which was substantially smaller than his initial proposal, is what the bond amount was based on. And you did the calculations on the trucking based on that smaller yardage. And unless there's a site plan review that says, okay, I'm gonna decrease it by another 50%, that would involve probably a review and do the, probably, but although as Dennis says, it's really kind of wanting to have something in reserve. And what you may find is that, do an inspection after 6 months of hauling, and there's $125,000 worth of damage, then, you can have stuck with a situation where, you have to increase the bond or whatever. If there's only $30,000 or $50,000 worth of damage perceived, and say, okay, well, we've given you a $50,000 bond, you either can renew it or, and keep going, or stop and fix the road, because this may be a very expensive proposition now. But that's kind of the part of the whole proposal was the total cost was, the damage to the road and getting it back up to usable condition. So.
Did your scope change at all? Are you doing the same thing?
We're not changing anything yet. We haven't dug an ounce of sand out of there yet. I've got my engineer working on an AOT, what we were originally gonna try, but, you guys have limited me to 22 trucks a day, so that's all we can haul out of there, And they're gonna be pretty much tri-axles.
Basically, the plan that was approved by this board is still what your intent is.
Yep.
Upon the size, the ultimate volume of material, whether it's happening right away or whether it's gonna be spread out over more time, but the basic plan is the same.
It is for now, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you wanted to change that, you would come back and amend it, obviously.
Yes, sir. I would do that.
Other thoughts from the board?
The select board talked about this, I want to say a month ago or something, when it came in, and Rich St. Clair was there, and it was pretty much an unanimous decision that we did not want to reduce the bond. And that was based off the fact that we have reduced bonds in the past for people, and it seems like every time we do, we end up with more damage than there is bond to cover. And that's the big unknown. It's we don't know what the road is.
You guys built the road. You took the bond money from the builder that went belly up and hired, I think it was Continental, to build that road.
But I think, if I remember right, they finished the road. We don't know what do you remember that? Was that before you? Yeah. But I think they finished the roads, what they did, but the builder went bankrupt, and so they finished it with bond money.
Right.
they don't know the degree of it, but basically, I just polled everybody to make sure I remembered everything right, and it's unanimous that,
Yeah.
you know, our feeling, and it's not our decision, it's just our opinion that I'm passing on to this board.
No, I get it. You know, I mean, if we could revisit it in 6 months, maybe we go to 50,000 to start.
Problem is, you could do the damage in 6 months, not having money to cover it. The damage would be the first week, because we don't know what's gonna happen.
I think you guys have the power to shut me down too if it got really bad. I mean, if it did get really bad, then and you didn't have enough bond, you felt like that, then I mean, it seemed like you guys would be able to shut me down.
Okay, other thoughts from the board?
I think it's a good thing. I feel for you, but I don't build roads, I don't understand it. I have to defer to the expertise of town engineer and town road agent in order to protect the asset that the town has.
Yeah.
I absolutely pursues a way that we could make it happen, but there's a reason we have these experts that weigh in on this. So me having no knowledge of this, I feel uncomfortable going against their recommendations.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, 126 sounds cheap compared to what the estimate is that the state gives us and the town gives us for mile road paving.
Why don't I take this opportunity to read the comments from town departments? Fire department has no comment. Building department has no comment, but highway department does. And there's only one, and it says, no bond reduction should be approved as this is a standard cost of doing business in this line of work. So those are the department comments.
Well, I wanted to give you guys, you know, put the question out there, and so been waiting for a long time to ask you this. Unfortunately, I got held up for 6 months last year, wasting my time, and didn't realize what was going to happen there. But so
okay, so if there are no further comments on the board from the board, we need to decide on something. We have an application in front of us. What's not? It's not an application, is it, Glenn? It's a request.
It's a request, and so
But
you should
we
respond to
should
the
vote,
request.
yeah, we should vote on that request. And so then we need a motion.
I'll move that we, that the amount of the road bond remain 126,000 or remain in effect, whatever it is, that the bond not be reduced on this project.
So the motion is not to reduce the bond. Not to reduce the bond. Is there a second to that? Second. Second by, okay, so the motion was by Peter Coffin, second by Steve Hadfield. Further discussion. Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That's unanimous, Mr. Park.
all right, well, back to the drawing board. I'll talk to you guys
Thank you
soon.
for coming. Thank you for coming in.
No problem. Nice to see you all again.
Good luck with whatever happens.
Oh, it's gonna happen. I just didn't want to have to borrow that much money.
I understand. Okay. Finish that one at 9:30. We're starting this one at 9:02. Is that it? Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah. Okay. So this is the last scheduled hearing for the night. They've been waiting patiently over there. This is a continuation of a public hearing from February 18th. It's for Joseph Falzone. The property is located at 53 Marshall Road, tax map R41, lot 7. Again, well, the actual, Mr. Falzone's the applicant, the actual property owner is the Hazel Hanson heirs. Is that still, that's still the case, right? And it's a continuation from our February 18 meeting. The applicant is proposing a 7-lot residential single-family subdivision. And I believe there were some things that you folks were going to work on and come back to us with responses to those things. And so if you're going to speak for this, okay. And okay, if you could just do quick introductions for us for the record.
I'm Joe Falzone, the developer.
I pronounced it wrong.
That's all right. Give me that permit, you can call me anything.
My apologies, yeah. Call you anything you want. And
good evening, Scott Cole from Beal Associates.
okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So at our last meeting, we had reviewed the revised design of a 7-lot frontage subdivision. At that time, we had received a comment letter both from Glenn and the town's review engineer, and we had briefly gone over those comments. Following that meeting, we had been tasked for some homework. There was a couple of issues that we need to investigate. I believe we have done that. We have issued a response letter to the town planner and the town's review engineer to address the outstanding comments, which we believe we have addressed. Just some minor background on what we've done on the revised plans. We have slightly revised the lot configuration. Previously, you'll see on the plans, there used to be 4 lots that were rather long going to the rear of the property. There's now 3 lots that go out to the rear.
Can I just make sure that I'm passing out the correct plan sets to folks?
The revision date should say 4th of February. Yeah.
It looks like on the end here it says issued January 2020. Would that be the one?
Yeah, that's
revised to 24, 25.
Say revisions of the permits. The left-hand side, that was wrong. Right-hand side.
No, there's a revision box, but there's nothing in it.
Okay, mine says 224-20.
Mine says 224-20 as well.
So
these guys can have this one.
So so if I handed you a plan set that doesn't have a date on it, then that's not the right one. I'm not sure why all of these are not there.
They're more likely leftovers from the previous submittal.
Maybe so. And this is the plan set that was with.
Didn't make it out here?
No, I thought that they all did make it out here.
Oh, hang on, here's another package.
That's the package. Jeez. Snap.
Well, what do you know? You guys have that? You got one?
Yep.
The correct one?
Yes, I gave it mine.
Oh, you want yours? You want one? Is everyone able to look at a plan? Please continue.
Thank you. So continuing on, as I was saying, there has been some minor lot line revisions to the lots. And the reason that this derived from, I'd just like to explain. In the prior commentary in regards to the wetland setback that was raised by Dennis, who was absolutely correct, we had incorrectly displayed a wetland setback. It had to do with, it would be lot 7A now that they are up to date. So in regards to supplying the wetland setback, we had an incorrect setback of 50 feet, which was supposed to be 85 feet. To make sure that we were absolutely correct, we had another meeting with Jim Gove to make sure that that was correctly in his report, and I had actually drawn it incorrectly. That was agreed, the 85 was correct. However, in doing so, he realized he had not quite fully evaluated the off-site wetland, which is off the property, going along the lot line. He went out and did that correctly, which is basically just a drainage conveyance, and has the lower setback. So he had issued a revised wetlands evaluation report. I hope we should have a copy of that. He actually did a very nice job and took some photos of the drainage way and the reasoning for the amendment to his study. So that should be so that now has interpreted into the revised lot lines, the revised lot 7A and 7B. Now we have 3 lots that's reached to the back instead of prior there was 4. It's probably easier if I quickly summarize the response letters that we have provided, so the board will know what we need. Sure. We responded to Glenn's original letter, some of the revisions that we made. Number 1, town compliant monumentation. We asked the board about possibly enlarging the separation between monuments, and the board felt that was not the right thing to do, so we let USET Survey know that, and I believe all the monumentation is per the town regulations in regards to distances and the actual physical monumentation themselves on the block corners. Number 2, there are wetland stamps now provided on all the plans that require it. For well radii, number 3, all the wells have been adjusted to not impede on any of the abutting well lots, other than 1, which we have provided a well easement, which is required. It's very, actually, a very small pie-shaped area that would actually be impeded because where I placed the the well on lot 7C, where it actually goes over the property line is into the vernal pool setback. There's a very small area there that could be encompassed, I guess, by a structure, so we then apply the well easement as required. The lots, as you can see, are now alphabetic instead of numeric, and that will be, again, as I understand, revised, and real 911 numbers will be assigned to these lots for the system. Shared driveways we have gone into detail on in the last hearing. I believe the board felt that what we had was adequate and intent. We did have USET Survey go back out in the field for number 6, and they did locate some abutting structures, mostly on the Escobar's property, and they did also locate an additional structure out towards the rear on map 41 lot 8G that was not located prior. So we now have located everything certainly within the 100-foot distance of the number 7, I actually did speak with someone from the Hampshire DOT. There are no required easements or additions at this time, and the application that we had submitted to them is not scheduled to be reviewed till mid of this month. So I've not heard any more details. Number 8, there was a specific request from Glenn as to the amount of impervious surface pre and post. I do have it in the response letter here. I do apologize, I actually did the calculation just after the plans were printed, so this exact note will be on the plans, but it reads, the existing impervious area of the lot is 2,041 square feet or 0.001%. The anticipated impervious area is approximately 28,000 square feet or 0.01% of the parent parcel. A note will be added to the final plans as required, as the calculation was determined after the plans were printed. Number 9, test pits for the proposed lot were in the 4K. Basically, you can see I have revised the 4K area for that lot, taking care of that situation. Response to Glenn. We have a secondary letter that was included in regards to, the notations that were derived from the town's review agent. Number 1 is zoning article 202. I actually just highlighted on that one the June goal report and the wetland setback. Was that explanatory enough for everyone? I think that was. Number 2, section 901, driveways greater than 150 feet wide. NFPA required driveways from 20 feet wide. Now this item here, section number 2, driveways rise to 20 feet wide. I did have a lengthy conversation with the road agent as to what additional information he needs or what I should provide at this time. He said as long as all the driveways were adequately shown at the proposed 20 feet wide, meeting with the town's criteria, he would rather reserve the right to, I believe there was a member on the board that said we should try to maybe look at for driveway permit information at this time. And the road agent said he would like to do that after the approval, and we actually have full septic system, house location, and everything also. So that was fine. I believe I added a note to that. On sheet 7, the highway access plan. All proposed driveways to conform with the specifications of the driveway entrance detail, section 901.1F of the driveway permit regulations. Any driveway that exceeds 150 feet in length is required to be a minimum of 20 feet wide at a grade no less than 10%. NFPA 1, section 18, and contain a turnaround as detailed per the Kingston Fire Department. Driveway should be designed and submitted for review by the fire department and town road agent or a driveway permit prior to the building permit. The actual detail and dimensions came from a discussion with the fire chief in regards to the length of the apparatus that the town has. That's where that detail has come from. Number 3, the plan shows 2 double common driveways. We already hit on that, the plan board thought that was okay. Section 901.1F, this is number 4, drivers shall conform to the town standard entrance detail. Again, that relates to the proposed notes. Those will be scrutinized at a later date. And as far as a drainage comment in those, actually, I did review all those. Each driveway is actually located at a high point, so there's no need for a proposed culvert. Number 5 had to do with the actual layout of the proposed lots. We had discussed that at the previous meeting. Certainly the board can look at the revised configuration. I made sure to check the regulations and make sure that they all adhere to the minimum width and lot dimensions in the regs. I believe everything is okay in that respect. And they all do meet the requirement of the buildable area as well. Number 6, there was a question if we know about the fire protection of the fire department. Again, in conversation with the fire chief, he said that they did understand that and they know it was fine. They know it's going to be sprinkled. Number 7, this one had to do with some homework for us and Mr. Falzone. The plan will show location and grading for mailbox turnout approved by local postal service. I believe we had submitted email correspondence with the postmaster. They are allowing us to have roadside mailboxes, and those have been specified, as you can see on the highway access plan, in 3 locations. So there'll be 1 post with, well, it'll be 2 mailboxes on one and 3 mailboxes on the third.
So the mailboxes will coincide with the driveway entrances for those serving those particular lots.
Yep, we have that. Like I said, in response, we have
that response in the file?
Yes, we do. Yep.
Okay.
From the postmaster. Okay. Lot numbers to be approved. We said that. I believe Doucette has put a note onto which specific plans now will be recorded. We know the state permits are still pending. The monumentation has been all corrected, as I said. Number 12, the applicant should explain disclaimer. Number 12, I believe Doucette has revised the note to make it more clear. The reasoning for that, what I understand, was that the majority of the topo on this side of the stream where the development is occurring was all stick topo, and a combination of the LiDAR topo was in the rear. That note was a little fuzzy, so they had to clean that up. And then there was a question for benchmarks. Doucette has added actual benchmarks on the premises, I believe on the existing conditions plans. I believe that wraps up what we had for commentary, or comments on the first go around. I have not seen any additional questions or comments at this time.
We do have, I know we have 1 comment from Glenn, and I think we have some from Dennis as well. But before you guys do that, other than the DOT the driveway permits from the state, what other state permits are outstanding?
State subdivision.
Subdivision approved.
Correct, the lots that are less than 5 acres.
Okay. Glenn, do you want to do yours? Because I think it's just 1.
Mine's really simple. They addressed all the issues that I have, save one. That is the one about impervious surface that Scott already mentioned, that there is a note that he's already prepared that will be put on the final set of plans. So with that...
that would be a condition as well.
Correct, and with that being noted, they made all of my comments.
Okay. Dennis?
So, there's a few comments that I had that may have been discussed, and Scott did allude to them just now. So I'll just go through them again in case the board wants to discuss them more, because I'm not sure that they were addressed or not. So some of my previous comments were, I deleted those, and so these are the ones that I think that I wasn't sure of. So it was number 3, concerning the number of driveways, that the regulation requires no more than 2 driveways. And my question is, should that require a waiver? I remember the board talking about that, but I don't know if it needs a waiver or if we did do a waiver, but maybe that should be talked about again.
Dennis, hold on a second. Scott, did you address that one in your comments?
I did. Actually, the regulation says multiple are basically recommended for multiple pieces of land. The way that this reads is to 1 parcel of land. But these will be individual parcels, not one. So I believe the intent, correct me if I'm wrong, so 1 parcel of land can't have more than 2, like 3 driveways to 1 piece of right away.
Wow.
And the board actually, as a part of their last meeting, voted on the configuration for the driveway. And approved it.
Okay.
As long as you've talked about it, because I couldn't remember, so there was a lot of stuff that was talked about, and I just wanted to be sure that you're comfortable. So number 8, too, about the lot numbers being approved by the board, by the selectmen, because they do have them as as the regulation require under alphabetical now. Number 10 was about the permits, state permit. Number 13, the plans show extensive trail system to abutting properties across town line. Are they active, and do abutters have rights? I remember talking about that, so I don't know if that needs to have a note on the plan or whether that was addressed or not.
The title reveals they have no legal rights. The existing owner has confirmed, and I don't have to put any note on the plan because they would be trespassing if they went on the property.
So private property, and there's no intent to grant
no intent
access of any kind.
Correct.
Okay. As long as it's clear, I just wanted to bring it up. A couple of additional comments. Number 14, on sheet 2, according to the soil report got by Gold, the different wetlands, A, B, C, D, and E, should be identified on the plan. Which wetlands are A, B, C, or D? On lot 7A, I assume the designated wetland is a B, which requires the 85-foot setback. It's labeled that way, but it's not to scale at 85 feet. That's on sheet 2. On sheet 6, I believe it does meet the setback. It does scale out properly, but not on sheet 2. So something you could just check on that, Scott. I don't think it's not a big deal, but on that sheet, it should be scaled properly. Number 15, note 14 on sheet 1 should be deleted or changed to say that bounds will be set according to the final approved plans. Because the note talks about how the bounds may not be set according to the approved plans, because when they go out to set them, they might hit a stump or a root or a rock or something like that. So typically the bounds are set before final plans are approved, so that note should be addressed. And number 16 on sheet 6, my comment is that perhaps the project engineer can explain and justify methods for obtaining the contiguous building area shown in each lot, particularly lot A and D. I was looking at those, trying to be sure that they met the requirements for contiguous lot area, and I talked to Glenn about this before the meeting. He's comfortable with it, and my concern was, like on lot D, the vernal pool is there, and the vernal pool setback intersects the contiguous area on that lot. So although the buildable area says 89,000 square feet, I was looking at it from the point of view of only half of it being the buildable area, so it would be less than the 60,000 square foot requirement. But I'm not sure that that's the way the regulation says. I talked to Glenn about that, and maybe Glenn can explain it better than I can, but I was just concerned about it and wanted to bring it to the attention of the board. And I don't know, Glenn, maybe...
Yeah, the way that I read the ordinance, it specifically says that you don't encumber those setback areas in that formula, and we made that change in 2015 to read that way. So I read it as allowing you to incorporate that in that 60,000 square foot measurement.
I can read that part of the ordinance too, because it talks about minimum required buildable area within the lot as required by the zoning shall be comprised of 60,000 square feet of dry contiguous land with all natural slopes less than 15% within 60,000 square feet. Buildable area is area not encumbered by property line setbacks, wetland and vernal pool setbacks, and natural steep slopes. I looked at that and read it to be that you can't count that area as buildable area, but I guess the interpretation of how it's written is that it can be.
Well, the way you read it, it sounds as if it can, but Glenn, you're interpreting it differently?
We specifically changed it so that...
Is Dennis looking at the most current?
He's looking at the one that gives that date, yes.
I believe it was down on a property that they wanted to subdivide a piece that was above the wetlands in the middle of it, and because of slope and wetlands and everything else, decided that it was not the 60,000 square foot buildable area, and clarified that you had to exclude unbuildable area, which is swimming pools and setbacks and things like that from the calculations. Which is what, I think, I clarified, that's what Kim just read.
You know, it's just, it was unclear to me, and that's kind of what I was wondering, and just wanted to be sure that these lots met the requirement buildable area. Buildable area is not encumbered by property line setbacks, wetlands, vernal pool setbacks, and natural steep slopes exceeding 15%.
And which sheet on the plan shows buildable area?
Sheet 6.
6 is the best.
And my concern was lot D, with the vernal pool intersecting the buildable area.
You know, the way I derived the buildable area was by using AutoCAD, turning off basically the contours and everything, leaving all just setbacks on, and then doing the internal area in the 89,000.
Just take a look at it. You can tell it's that size.
I did look at it.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it. It is that size, and it's been shown right along on our plans.
I did, but I just wanted to be sure on that like that, but that lot right there, if you look at the setback from the vernal pool, it splits the buildable area.
Lot C?
D. D.
D.
Glenn, you see what they're referring to?
Mm-hmm.
That vernal pool setback then affects both
lots.
D and
Both
E.
lots. Yeah. Actually, E, there's a little, probably a walk-in area in between the building setback from the property line and the vernal pool setback. Question is that considered maintaining contiguous? I know, Richard, I remember you were chairman when we were talking about this on another subdivision, and when it narrows up like that, the question is it really contiguous?
We've actually dealt with this in another town. They specifically put in their regulations a specific distance that needs to be between setbacks. I thoroughly reviewed yours, and you do not have that criteria. Contiguous means touching land. So despite the vernal pool setback, that the definition, I guess, that Glenn was looking at, contiguous means contiguous touching.
And at least on E, there is a very small this one, it's well, it's within the setback.
Right.
Right.
Which at this scale, you can't tell because we don't require an actual, if you could fit a piece of yarn through there, it would meet the definition of contiguous.
That's the way it's written.
I think we're literally splitting hairs.
So on lot D, would that would not provide the 60,000 square feet if the board were to say that if you weren't able to count the area within the setback. Is that right?
I'm not trying to be argumentative, I'd have to ask on what grounds.
Well, what I heard from what was just read about the not being able to count areas within setback.
This buildable area is area not encumbered by property line setbacks, wetland and vernal pool setbacks, and natural steep slopes exceeding 15%. So it's not encumbered by those. So if that's the case, in this case, it is encumbered. The wetland setback does encumber the contiguous nature of buildable area. And the question is on E, what's the minimum that would be allowed to make it contiguous? If it's not wide enough to go down through there with a wheelbarrow or something like that, does that make it contiguous? Like you say, you run a string through there, you probably could say it's contiguous, but that, I think the intent here is to be usable, buildable area. That you can't use it if it's encumbered by property line setback, wetlands, vernal pools.
For example, if you couldn't put a driveway through there, to the back part of the lot, then you couldn't do it because of this, you couldn't put the driveway through the vernal pool setbacks, and you couldn't.
I thought the state had a provision where you can move a vernal pool.
No.
Isn't that what, like Hannaford's was gonna do?
I mean, there's an ability to buy vernal pools.
I thought you
by
could
putting
place it
money
in another spot or move it within the lot if you had the space to do it.
Oh, I've never heard of that. You can fill a vernal pool if you're willing to pay for 10 times the mediation of that vernal pool.
I thought the purpose of that was to move it, that you
No,
were buying
that's-
it if you couldn't replace it on that site.
I've never heard of them moving them on site because you can't move the vernal pool.
905.6.
So is this something that we could do a waiver for?
Is what?
Is this something we could do a waiver for?
No, this isn't zoning.
Oh, this isn't zoning.
This isn't zoning, yeah. Oh my God, no. It absolutely is subdivision. I'm sorry, it's absolutely subdivision.
I was gonna say, you were talking 900 something.
Yeah, it's 905. It's 905. It's subdivision. It's subdivision.
The answer is yes.
So the answer is yes.
You can waive it.
And you don't have a prohibition of how wide it is? I know the towns that he's talking about.
No, we don't define what contiguous is.
personal feeling is, based on the scale, we can't really tell whether it could be contiguous, it could not. But I would be, in this situation, I would be comfortable with a waiver because it's so close.
On both of the lots?
I don't think he needs one for the, which is it?
Well,
They're saying this one, E, but he's got a space, obviously. This
Yeah.
one's so close, I'd put a waiver on that one, E.
Yeah, I think E, you can clearly see a space at this scale.
I could drive a car down through there.
But D, if that's the one that's in contention, I think that would be the one. If they just quickly drafted a waiver, I think.
Whoop. Mr. Cole, if the board were to do that and grant that waiver, do we have a sense for what the buildable area? Oh, it doesn't matter. Never mind.
You probably should be shown what the area would be on that lot, the buildable area. If you grant a waiver, it should say probably correct what's shown as a buildable area as to what there actually is for a buildable area, and refer to the waiver if that's the direction we're going.
Well, I think for me, I'm not saying that the buildable area isn't what they've depicted. I'm just saying at the scale, I can't determine it. Because it could be, in fact, not require a waiver, but I just can't tell the scale.
I can say, because I always try to keep it that way, I 100% can tell you there is a gap between that vernal pool buffer and the building sideline setback. No matter how small it is, there is a gap.
On D?
Right.
It looks like it to me on the plan.
Well, on D, if you've got 11.29 acres, what is the size of the area behind the vernal pool to the shoreland?
Behind the brook?
From the back of the vernal pool line to the beginning of the wetland, the 100-foot wetland buffer. It's like 6 inches by 1.5 inches.
Yeah, it's probably similar to the front area, but I honestly don't know.
Can't write a waiver request?
Well, I mean, he's indicating that he guarantees there's a gap there.
I purposely, at this last hearing, when you asked us to have the plans in by a certain date, at noon, which we did, I, as late as today, sent 2 emails to Ellen asking if Dennis had any comments to try to avoid this tonight. And at around 4:30, she emailed me back and said there was none. And that's the way the playing field was left when you asked me to get the plans on time.
Well, that's because she didn't have them at that time. I believe Dennis brought them with him tonight, is that right?
Yeah, but we had agreed at that last hearing that if I got them in a certain date, that there would be time that the comments would come back to us so that I wouldn't be confronted with this, measuring something here in front. It would have blown that up so you could clearly see that there is the connection there.
All right, so we have a couple of choices here. I mean, the board can make a judgment on if in fact there appears to be enough of a separation between the vernal pool buffer and the sideline setback, in which case it could be considered contiguous and then the issue goes away, or if you think that there isn't space there, you could ask the applicant to provide a waiver request and vote on it.
I make a motion to not require a waiver request for the setback and an attestation of the applicant of the existence of a gap complying with the contiguous requirement.
I second.
Motion by Chris, second by Peter Baiki, that, I can't repeat that, but you're essentially accepting the applicant's contention that, that there's a gap there, and therefore it's a contiguous situation of upland.
Yes, right.
It's a motion and a second. Further discussion. All for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm opposed. Abstentions? Okay, so it passes. 6 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstentions. Okay, so we're past that.
Are we ready for a motion to grant acceptance?
Unless the public comment.
I didn't.
I think he's with the development.
Are you with the applicant?
He's with the development team, yeah.
I just figured you'd want to say it anyway.
Well, we do. We need to say that. It's a public hearing, and so, well, you are part of the public sitting out there, so if you have comment or a question, so we'll close public comment. Dennis, you had finished going through your items.
I did.
Glenn, you went through yours. I did make a couple of, we did have one town department comment, which is no comment, from building inspector. There was nothing else from town. I made a couple of comments. Lynn, I suspect you were making some notes. We've got a couple of outstanding state permits. Got a note that needs to be on there for impervious surface calculations. Maybe there's something else.
I think I got it all. So I make a motion that we grant approval for the subdivision plan dated, you're gonna have to help me, February.
Yeah, it was revised to, well, this sheet says 2/25/20, in the front it says 2/24/20. So on my comment sheet, I said I revised a plan that said February 24/25, 2020.
Looks like most of these say February 24th.
Okay, dated February 24th, with the following conditions. The plan will include a note detailing the existing and anticipated impervious area in square feet and percentage of total lot. That the lot numbers will be approved by the Board of Selectmen. The New Hampshire DOT and state subdivision permits will be noted on the recorded sheet. On sheet 2, the soil report by Gove Environmental for the different wetlands A, B, C, D, and E will be identified on the plans. Note 14 on sheet 1 should be deleted or changed to say the bounds will be set according to the final approved plans.
Second.
Okay, motion by Lynn, second by Chris. Further discussion.
Do we have to add the date?
Yeah.
Yes. No, if you don't ask for something different, the time frame to meet the conditions is 90 days. Do you need longer than that?
It doesn't hurt to have longer, but I don't want to take longer.
Well, it's your benefit, if the state doesn't get a hold of you.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you do?
But you're held by the
Out
state.
of your hands, out of our hands.
Yeah, if it could be 6 months, I'd be.
So 180 days? So that's part of the motion? And the second? Anything else? Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
And we'll finish this hearing at 10:17. Oh, yeah.
Essentially.
I got it. I got it.
the station.
Yes.
Quite frankly, we're gonna grant the waiver anyway, I'd rather put the onus on them.
That's the result of this, a lot of civil trials.
All right, let's see if we can roll through this remaining stuff. We've got some correspondence, but we've got a letter from Glenn Greenwood addressed to Capri Realty. Glenn, do you want to, this is regarding 6 Spruce Lane. I'm assuming this is the one that you turned back to them? Or do we need to?
At this point.
We also have a bond reduction request for Capri Realty as well.
I'm sorry?
A bond reduction request for Capri Realty, but that goes along with, they were asking for a reduction from the $5,000 engineering to 2, but since you've dispensed with that, we don't need to deal with it.
Does that mean they're not on the agenda for next?
It does.
That's correct. Request for bond reduction for Pothier LLA. The letter says, I, Robert Pothier, request the amount of $2,000 to cover the cost of the engineering agreement. And it's dated February 10, signed by Robert Pothier. And Ellen has a note here on it saying that the board needs to approve this request. Okay, let me know if there is a different amount.
Right, and that application is a boundary line adjustment. So going to the 2,000, I think is fine.
Is there a motion to that effect?
Yeah, we changed the bond amount to $2,000 for property.
Motion by Peter Coffin. Second by Lynn. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous. Two invoices for Rockingham County Conservation District. One is for attending a planning board meeting when he was here with us the last time. This is for Mike Cuomo. And the other one is for sidewalk report. Oh, that was for the sidewalk on January 9th. Invoice from town engineer for his review of work on 4 Main Street. Total of 4 readings. And for work at 35 Marshall Road. That was this application, right? 35 Marshall.
Is that for you or the fire department?
It's town engineer.
Oh, so is it addressed to the planning board? 35 Marshall Road.
It's addressed to the select. Oh, it's addressed to the selectmen. I can't sign this one.
You can't. Doesn't matter as long as you get a check. There was no work for that steep driveway?
Oh, the driveway?
It wasn't a planning board thing, it was a selectmen's thing. Richard's got a item issue.
Let's see, items that came up at inspector's meeting for me to ask the board. for Board of Selectmen rep regarding Galloway enforcement of non-conformance with site plan and feather banners. So there are two items that came up at the inspectors meeting on February 27. One, is the planning board still interested in the Board of Selectmen following up on enforcement for the large pile of dirt, et cetera, at the Galloway property, non-conformance with approved site?
Did it disappear? Have you seen all of it? I haven't.
I saw that today, it's the first time I've seen it.
It's enormous, isn't it?
It's massive, you
Still
can
there?
ski off of it.
The one that's still there?
It's still there.
Yeah.
The one that's still there, that is never going away.
All right, so does the board still want Selectmen to follow up on this?
I think so, yeah, because one of the, I think the select board wanted some kind of analysis of what's in that, and the vote said that. Find out if there's asbestos and.
I'm gonna say yes unless someone says no. All right, number two, any planning board concerns about the feather banners at All American Assisted Living, any enforcement required? I mean, we have, those feather banners are really not a.
We say that we don't allow them.
Right, and we have sent enforcement requests to the selectmen on other sites that.
Numerous times.
So I think to be fair, I mean, we have to be consistent.
He's also had them up a decent time frame.
Yeah, they have.
Right, it's not like just grand opening and down.
So, so I'm gonna say,
That's right.
I'm gonna say yes unless I hear a no. Okay, and the board has received the latest issue of Town and City Magazine from the municipal associations, so it's in there if anybody's interested in seeing it. So that's it for correspondence.
Make a motion, we accept the minutes of the February board meeting with one typographical error.
Was that the one we discussed last time? Motion by Lynn on February 4 minutes.
I'll second that.
Second by Peter Coffin. Discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? One abstention, so 6 in favor, none opposed, 1 abstention.
I make a motion.
Any other business to come before the
I
board?
make a motion that the planning board will meet on March 31st due to the extensive proposal that is being brought forward with one agenda item, and that being the review of the proposal for 266.
Which is a design review.
Which I
Yep.
I don't know if I worded that correctly. Ellen can fix it.
Would you just expand your motion to allow the TRC to meet before then?
And to allow the TRC to meet before that,
And that Glenn would coordinate that.
and Glenn will coordinate the TRC meeting.
Is there a second? Second. Motion by Lynn, second by Peter Coffin. Discussion. Favor say aye. 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 Opposed? Abstentions? That's unanimous. Any other business?
It's my understanding that's a 56-page plan set.
It's a huge plan
And
set.
I would like to have the plans emailed to all of the members so that we can go through them. Tonight is even awkward going through 6 or 7 pages. I think I'd like to have a chance to review and get a feel for the plans prior to the meeting so that I could gather any questions I might have.
I talked with the design team about doing that, and they assured me, I called them last Monday, so it's been a week already. They assured me they'd do that they'd set up a Dropbox availability. So when I get those, I'll get them to everyone.
I was gonna say, I don't want them emailed to me, I'll come in and look at them.
Okay.
That's an awful lot of email.
Okay.
Takes a lot of.
Yeah, it does, it does.
6 pages.
It does.
At least have availability for plans for us because that's such a big thing. I really want to be able to have a review first. And then the last thing is, because of the scope of interest in this project, I think it would be more efficient for us to have a projector and screen so that the engineer providing the plans can at least have a laser pointer and show the audience what is going on with the plans. It's hard enough for the audience to follow just a couple page plan, but to have to skip one page to another page to another page when you've got 56 of them. So I make a motion that that happen. And that Ellen coordinate it.
Either borrowing or.
They can borrow the fire department projector.
Yeah, I think that they said they'll bring their own, but I'll make sure of it.
We have a screen on the
Yep,
stage.
we have a screen.
Yep.
Just need the projector and they need to bring their computer and their,
Hopefully it's bigger than the plan set.
Screen.
You did it as a motion, but I mean,
no, I didn't do it as a motion, I just did it, I just wanted us to do
okay,
that.
okay. I'm assuming the board is in agreement with this?
Yeah.
I know I've been pushing for it for a lot of things, but I think this means it's essential.
I got a copy of the plan, so I mean, I don't know if you want to get a copy of the plans. Work.
Maybe we could have a copy for Ellen, so that whenever we came in, we could review it here.
Are there extra copies there?
Extra copies, no, there aren't.
So, you don't have one in the office?
Oh, mine is still in the office, but all the others got distributed out.
They did electronic file to us?
They haven't done it yet, but they've assured me that they will do it. I mean, I can leave my copy in the planning board office, so that if anybody ever wants to see it, they can see
I prefer
it.
the electronic, if I can download it to my iPad, I'd rather have 56 pages like that and zoom in on stuff if I need it.
There'll be one in the planning board office as well.
Anything else?
Yes. Two quick announcements for the 10 people at home. There's a Seabrook drill tomorrow, so the sirens will be going off. And don't forget to vote next Tuesday.
Yes. Anything else?
It's a drill, but it's not the big training thing where everybody gets
Yeah, it's
together.
a training drill.
Oh, it is.
They say what time?
There'll be a group of fire department.
8 o'clock?
8 o'clock could be going to the sirens at 8:30.
Yeah.
Could be going till when?
I don't know what,
All the way.
I just know our dispatch center
Somewhere
has
between
people in there ready to go at 8.
So 8 to
Yeah,
11?
I was told 9, so.
Yeah.
It could take a while for the scenario show before they get to the siren one.
All right, how about a motion to adjourn at 10:30?
So moved. Second.
By Chris, second by everybody. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you all. See you in a couple weeks.
Ellen, for the record.
Adam,
pen is
thank you.
back in the box.
I can get more boxes of